Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
Elliot walked into his country home on Wednesday mid-morning, the first time since Sunday. He had only come to grab a few things before leaving again, expecting his wife, Laura, to be at work. As he entered the kitchen to make coffee, he noticed the handcuffs and strip of duct tape still on the table, where he had left them. The kitchen towel lay where he'd tossed it after wiping his face. The video camera was still mounted on its tripod next to the table, and the chair he had knocked over was still on the floor. Instead of making coffee, he opened the refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of Diet Coke. "Where the hell have you been?" Laura asked angrily as she walked into the kitchen. Elliot didn't answer, his eyes vacant. He walked past her into the bedroom to gather some clothes, but she grabbed his arm. "I asked you a question," she said, her anger rising. Elliot stopped, turned to face her. His expression was hollow, eyes dull and lifeless. "Let me go," he said quietly. Laura released his arm, letting him pass. She picked up the handcuffs, duct tape, and towel, then walked to the trash can and tossed them in. She unscrewed the camcorder from the tripod, setting the camera on the table before folding the tripod and placing it beside her. She headed for the bedroom, where Elliot was packing a large suitcase. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I'm packing," he replied, not looking up. "Another business trip?" she sneered.
No.
"Then where are you going?" she pressed. Elliot stopped and looked at her, his face still expressionless. "What does it matter?" he asked. Laura's frustration deepened. "You're my husband. I have a right to know." "You gave up that right last Sunday afternoon," Elliot replied coldly. He finished packing a few more items, closed the suitcase, and carried it into the living room, setting it by the door. Then he turned toward the study. Laura followed. Elliot gathered some papers from the desk, placing them into his briefcase before closing it. He then packed his laptop and power cord into a computer bag. Walking over to the kitchen table, he picked up the video camera, opening it to find the SD card still in place. "Is this what you recorded on Sunday?" Elliot asked, his voice flat. Laura smiled. "A souvenir of your payback. Very thoughtful, thank you." Elliot remained unmoved, still impassive. "Elliot, damn it, talk to me," Laura shouted. Elliot's expression flickered for a moment, and he finally spoke, his voice low. "What have you done to me? Why are you leaving?" she asked. "Laura, sit at the table with me," Elliot replied. He opened his computer bag, placed the laptop on the table, and sat down in front of it, gesturing for Laura to sit next to him. Once she was seated, he inserted the SD card into the laptop. "Let's have a look at this, then we'll talk," he said. The video started playing. It showed a chair pushed away from the kitchen table on the right and an empty table on the left. The camera shifted, and Laura's voice could be heard. "Welcome home, baby. Come into the kitchen. I've got a surprise for you, just like I promised on the phone." Elliot appeared on screen, smiling. Laura walked up to him, dressed in a short, thin robe, her hair and makeup perfect. She was barefoot and holding handcuffs, smiling. "Sit down in the chair," she said. Elliot sat, smiling back at her. Laura crouched behind him to cuff his wrists, the robe falling open and revealing nothing underneath. She slipped one wrist into the cuff, threaded the chain through the back of the chair, and secured the other wrist. Stepping out of the frame, she returned a moment later, covering his mouth with duct tape. Elliot's smile remained even with the tape on. Laura stood in front of him, dropping her robe to the floor. Elliot's eyes widened with excitement. "Are you ready for your surprise?" she asked, smiling. Elliot nodded eagerly. "We ready?" A moment later, footsteps were heard approaching. Elliot turned his head as a man, dressed in Elliot's robe, entered the room. Elliot's smile vanished, replaced by shock. "Honey, you remember Evan from my work, don't you?" Laura said, walking over to Evan. She untied the robe's belt, pulling it off his shoulders and tossing it into Elliot's lap. Evan was naked underneath. Elliot stopped the video and turned to look at Laura. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "You know exactly why," Laura replied calmly. "I don't know what the hell you're talking about," Elliot said, his voice cold. "Before we got married, I told you I'd do this," Laura continued, her voice steady. Elliot was confused. "What does that mean?" Laura met his gaze. "I told you that if you ever cheated on me, I'd sleep with you in revenge, and I'd do it right in front of you. Do you remember that?" Laura asked, her voice steady. "Is this what it's all about? This is your payback. I promised it, and I delivered." Elliot stared at her, confused and hurt. "You think I cheated on you?" "I know you cheated on me," she snapped. Elliot shook his head in disbelief. "Okay, I'll ask. When did I ever cheat on you?" Laura didn't flinch. "Don't try that with me, Elliot. You know exactly when, where, and with whom. Elliot pulled the SD card from the laptop and dropped it into his bag. He closed the laptop, slipped it into his briefcase, and zipped it up. He turned to face her, frustration rising. Either tell me what the hell you're talking about, or I'm leaving right now. Laura stood her ground, not backing down. Okay, don't play innocent. While you were on your so-called business trip last week, I got a call from Jerry's wife, Jill. She told me you and Jerry spent the whole week in bed with a couple of women. Elliot's eyes narrowed. Jill told you that? She did. What proof did she give you? Cut the poor victim act, Elliot. You know what you did. Elliot's anger flared. So, you retaliated by sleeping with me in front of me, based on a phone call from someone I trust? Yeah, Laura admitted flatly. I did it based on her word alone. No actual proof. And I didn't need any. Elliot's voice grew colder. You handcuffed me and slept with a man in front of me, humiliated me. All based on someone's word? Payback. That's what this is. Exactly, Laura replied, unbothered. We're even now. Elliot shook his head, still trying to make sense of it. You didn't even talk to me about it. You just decided I was guilty and punished me. Laura was quiet. Yes, she said finally, coldly. Now we're even. Elliot was still upset. Not that it matters now, but there are a couple of things I'd like to say. Go ahead, Laura said, her tone sharp. I was at a conference all last week. Jerry wasn't even there. He got fired from the band 2 months ago for having an affair with the receptionist. I haven't seen or heard from him since. I was a speaker at that conference. I was on stage from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day, and the whole week was videotaped. After the sessions, the group met until midnight to discuss the next day. I have multiple witnesses to confirm my whereabouts. I never left the hotel until I went to the airport after the conference ended. Laura looked unconvinced. So you deny it completely? Of course I do. And you have a phone call from someone who wasn't even there. Is that really proof? Elliot's voice was thick with disbelief. Sounds like a pretty lousy case to me. But you know what? I believe her, not you. What we believe doesn't make it a fact, Elliot said. I believed I was married to the most wonderful, loving woman in the world. What I learned on Sunday is that I'm married to a flawed, bitter woman who thinks so little of me that she physically and emotionally humiliated me, without any actual evidence of wrongdoing. Laura said nothing. Elliot stood up. I'm leaving now. You'll hear from my attorney in the next few days. I'm not going to divorce you, Elliot said, his voice steady. That's what this was all about, right? Now we're even, Laura. I didn't cheat on you. Weren't you listening? Laura's eyes narrowed. Of course I listened. You still think what you did was justified. Elliot's expression remained unchanged. I do. Then we have nothing more to discuss, Laura snapped. Just call Jill and find out what evidence she had. I'd really like to know. But honestly, it doesn't matter much right now. Without another word, Elliot turned and walked out of the house. He went to his hotel room, where he burned the video onto 3 DVDs. He had already made an appointment with his attorney and went to the office where he had started the divorce proceedings. He filed for divorce, citing adultery, and handed over a copy of the DVD to his lawyer. The prenuptial agreement would hold up with the evidence from the video. The attorney offered advice on the financial matters that needed immediate attention, and Elliot made sure everything was handled as soon as he left the office. He turned his cell phone to silent mode and, when he returned to his hotel room, checked it. The first call from Laura came about 5 minutes after he left, followed by nothing for 2 hours. Then, the calls came in every 5 minutes or so. Elliot listened to only one voicemail, the first one after the 2-hour gap. Oh my God, Elliot, I finally got through to Jill. She was drunk. Please call me. I made a mistake. Please call me. Elliot deleted all of her calls and voicemails without listening to the rest, then erased her texts and emails. The calls, texts, and emails continued, but Elliot paid no attention. He reviewed the numbers as the calls came in. He also received calls from Laura's father, mother, and sister. He called Derek, her father, back. Hey Derek, it's Elliot, Elliot said calmly. I know who the hell it is. You're not the only one who can read. What the hell did you do to my daughter? Derek's voice was angry. I didn't do anything to her except not return her calls, Elliot replied, keeping his composure. Damn it. She's hysterical. What the hell is going on? Derek, if you want to know what happened, you're going to have to talk to Laura. I'm talking to you. Damn it. Derek shouted. Wasting your time. Talk to her. Elliot remained calm. Did you sleep with someone or something? Talk to Laura, Elliot said firmly. You son of a a-hole. I should come over there and kick your butt, Derek threatened. Derek, Listen to me. If you want to know what happened, you're going to have to find out from Laura. I'm not discussing this with you, Mary, or anybody else. Talk to Laura. You a-hole. You really cheated on her, didn't you? Goodbye, Derek, Elliot said before hanging up. Derek called back almost immediately, but Elliot ignored it. Then, Mary, Laura's mother, called. Elliot deleted all their voicemails, then went out for dinner and returned to his room for the night. Thursday morning, he bought a new cell phone but kept his old one as well. He went to his office, took an extended vacation, and gave his contacts his new number, asking them not to share it. Afterward, he rented a small, furnished apartment on the far end of town and signed a 6-month lease. He went to the grocery store for supplies, and by the end of the day, had the apartment set up and organized. On Friday morning, his lawyer called, and Elliot met with him at the courthouse. He signed the divorce papers, and after filing them, was given a copy to serve to Laura. The attorney reminded him that while Laura's copy didn't require a signature, it was important to have an impartial witness when she was served. Elliot called Laura and arranged to meet for lunch at a restaurant they used to frequent. When Laura arrived, Elliot was already sitting at a quiet table in the back. She looked well as she walked toward him, dressed up and carrying a duffel bag. He stood to greet her, and as she tried to kiss him, he turned his cheek instead. It was clear from her expression that this wasn't what she had hoped for. She sat down across from him. Elliot, I made a mistake, Laura said. I want us to put this behind us and move forward. Elliot nodded, but his response was firm. I agree. It's time to move forward. When the waiter, Lynn, came by, Elliot declined her services. Lynn was someone they'd known for a long time. What can I get you to drink? Lynn asked, smiling. 2 Diet Cokes, Laura replied. Lynn left, and Elliot reached out to hand Laura the divorce papers. Laura, these are the divorce papers. Lynn is my witness that you've been served. Laura's face went pale as she looked at the papers. Lynn returned with their drinks, and Laura turned to Elliot, trying to reason with him. Elliot, you said you wanted to put this behind us and move forward. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm moving forward. But Elliot, I made a mistake, she insisted. That's not what I meant, Laura continued, her voice desperate. We've been married for over 7 years. Until Sunday, those were the best years of my life. I've loved you like I've never loved anyone, and I probably never will again. Don't throw that away. We have a great marriage. Elliot's eyes were cold as he responded, his voice steady. It was great, until last Sunday. You ruined it. You ruined everything. Laura, looking confused, pleaded again. I made a mistake. Don't you see that? Elliot looked at her, his expression hardening. Let me tell you what I see when I look at you, or when I close my eyes. I see the woman I loved. But now, I see him, having you on the table in front of me, hearing you tell me how much you like it, and how much better he is than I am. That's what I see now, Laura. Not the woman I cared about. You killed her that day. But Elliot, it was all a mistake, Laura pleaded. No, Elliot replied coldly. It was very deliberate. The reason you did it was a mistake, not the act itself. I told you that if you cheated on me, I would have revenge sex in front of you. You knew what would happen, and you even agreed to it. Laura lowered her gaze to the table, ashamed. Yeah, I did it knowing it would never come to that. What did I tell you would happen if you cheated on me? Elliot asked. Laura looked down, unable to meet his eyes. You said you'd divorce me. Elliot handed her a DVD. This is for you. It's a copy of your not cheating moment with Evan. Elliot, it wasn't cheating, it was revenge, Laura defended herself. Lynn returned with their drinks and took their lunch orders, but Elliot didn't break his stare. Laura, sex outside of marriage is adultery, he said flatly. Unless both parties agree to it, it's considered cheating. We can work this out, Elliot. We'll see a therapist, Laura offered, but Elliot shook his head. No, Laura, we can't. You showed me a side of you that destroyed the woman I loved. You killed her, as surely as if you'd ripped out her heart. But instead, you ripped out mine. I don't want a divorce, but I will fight you. Laura's face hardened. I won't accept this. I won't give up on us. Elliot's voice was low and controlled. On Sunday, you showed me a different side of you. I have another side too. You don't want to see it. What other side? She asked, almost sarcastically. The side where I become as vicious, indifferent, and cold as you were that day. I won't use a mistake as an excuse. I will own what I do. You're not like that, Elliot, and you know it. Funny, I was thinking the same thing about you, he retorted. Laura's voice cracked. Damn it, Elliot, this was a mistake. No, Elliot said, his eyes hardening. It was a deliberate act of revenge. What did you tell your parents? Laura hesitated. I told them we had a falling out, that we'd work it out. A fight about what? Elliot pressed. Laura looked down, saying nothing. Laura, what about what? Elliot repeated. I told them you were having an affair, she finally admitted. Elliot's jaw tightened. You never told them the truth? No, Laura responded quietly. Why not? Because they wouldn't understand, she said, looking ashamed. They wouldn't realize it was a mistake. Maybe I'm finally getting it, Elliot said, his voice cold. I know what I did to you is wrong. I based it more on judgment than fact. I know I hurt you deeply, but we can't get past this. We can't rebuild our marriage. We can't put this behind us. Laura's face crumpled. Please, Elliot, we can fix this. Elliot shook his head. The woman I loved is gone. She no longer exists. I'll fight you every step of the way, Laura said, defiant. There's nothing to fight for, Elliot replied. It's over. Don't make me reveal the other side of me. You won't like it. You're bluffing, Laura said, but there was doubt in her voice. Don't push it, Elliot warned. Get a lawyer, have them review the petition, and contact mine if you have any questions. You'll be single, and you can have all the Evan you want in 90 days. Laura stared at him, her anger rising. This has nothing to do with Evan. Elliot softened a little. Sorry, that was rude of me. I apologize, but I'm not leaving you. You already have the settlement. Accept it and move on. No way in hell, she spat, refusing to back down. Lynn came back with their food, and Elliot handed her his credit card. She returned a moment later with a check for Elliot to sign. Elliot signed the papers, then stood up, still untouched by his food. Enjoy your meal, Laura, he said coldly. I lost my appetite last Sunday when you spit on me. With that, Elliot left for his house. On Tuesday, Laura met with her lawyer for the first time. The lawyer, a tough but fair woman recommended by a friend, greeted her. Have a seat, Mrs. Marsh. I'm Troy Barlow. What can I do for you? My husband's trying to divorce me, Laura explained. Has he served you with papers? Troy asked. Yes, last Friday, Laura replied. May I see them? Troy asked. Laura handed over the papers. Troy skimmed the first page. He's citing adultery. Is that true? No, it was a misunderstanding, Laura explained. You had sex with someone other than your husband, correct? Troy asked. Yes, but it was a mistake. Did your husband consent to you having sex with another person? Troy inquired. Not specifically with this person, but he agreed to me having sex in retaliation if he cheated on me. So, your husband cheated, and you had revenge sex? Troy asked, clarifying. Well, yes and no, Laura replied. I did have revenge sex, but then I found out he wasn't cheating on me. Your husband wasn't cheating, but you still had revenge sex? Troy repeated, sounding incredulous. I did, Laura admitted. It's called adultery, Mrs. Marsh, Troy said. But I thought he was cheating, Laura protested. What proof did you have? Troy asked. A friend told me, Laura explained. But apparently, my friend was wrong. Finally, someone who sees it was a mistake, Troy said. So, based on what you've told me, you had revenge sex based on hearsay evidence. Does your husband have proof that you had sex with another man? Yes, Laura replied. I handcuffed him to a chair and made him watch. Then it's his word against yours. Is there any real evidence? Troy asked. I videotaped the whole thing, Laura said, pulling out the DVD Elliot had given her. Can I watch it? Troy asked. Laura nodded, and Troy inserted the DVD into the player. After watching only a few minutes, Troy stopped it. I'll need to watch the whole thing, but I can do that later. Let me familiarize myself with the petition first. She began reading the document. After flipping through a few pages, she looked up. I see that you signed a prenuptial agreement, and at first glance, it seems pretty solid, especially concerning adultery. If he changes the wording of the complaint to irreconcilable differences, we can avoid that clause. I suspect that will be a difficult task, though. Even with the prenup, he's offering you considerably more than the law requires. Without it, you would likely be entitled to a significantly larger cash settlement. I don't want a cash payout, Laura replied, nor do I want a divorce. I want my husband back. You told him that? Troy asked. Yes, but he didn't even consider it, Laura said, her voice tinged with frustration. Contested divorces can be very expensive for everyone involved. If we go for counseling, it can't hurt. Then let's do it, Troy said. We can seek counseling and let him know that if he refuses, we'll fight for everything. Do you have any dirt on your husband? Troy asked, shifting the focus. You mean criminal stuff? Laura asked, confused. Anything, Troy clarified. Has he ever hit you or threatened you? No, Laura answered, shaking her head. He's never raised his voice to me. I'll sort through the paperwork carefully, watch the video, and get back to you in a day or two, Troy said, preparing to wrap up the meeting. Does he have a copy of that DVD? Troy asked. Laura nodded in response. It was Wednesday when Troy called her. Mrs. Marsh, he has a pretty solid case. The video you recorded is very damaging, and you don't want any judge to see it. Let's proceed with what we discussed. We're going to offer 6 weeks of family counseling. I'll do whatever it takes, Laura replied. I want my husband back. 2 days later, Elliot's lawyer called him, asking him to come into the office. Elliot went in that afternoon. Elliot, they've requested 6 weeks of couples counseling, the lawyer said. What if I say no? Elliot asked. They'll fight us tooth and nail, the lawyer replied. I'm against it. What do you think? Elliot asked. She hired Troy Barlow. She's one of the best, probably better than me. I'm the very best, Elliot said, his voice firm. I'm ready to fight, teeth and nails if I have to. Then let's just say no and see what happens, the lawyer advised. Keep me posted. That night, Elliot called Laura. Laura, I've given up on counseling. I told you that if you argue with me about it, you'll see another side of me you won't like. Why are you acting like this? Just stop this crazy divorce and come home, Laura pleaded. That's not going to happen. This is your last chance to get off easy. I won't call you again. I'm fighting you, Elliot. I don't want a divorce. Have it your way, Elliot said, ending the call. The following Monday, Laura filed a countersuit on the grounds of irreconcilable differences. She asked for everything. 2 days later, the local school board and the school where Laura worked were served with documents alleging inappropriate relations between 2 married teachers, Laura Marsh and Joseph Cross. Attached to the documents were explicit photos of the 2 of them having sex. The school board held an emergency closed-door meeting and fired both of them the same day. That same day, Evan's wife received a DVD in the mail, along with the names and phone numbers of those featured in the video. After watching it, she called Elliot. Hi, this is Elliot Marsh. Is this Nina Cross? Elliot asked. Yes. Did you send me that DVD? Nina replied. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, but I thought you had a right to know. When was this made? She asked. A week ago Sunday, at my house, Elliot explained. Is that you sitting in the chair? Nina asked, referencing the video. Yes, that's me. And the video's real. It's not edited. Is this woman your wife? Nina asked. For the moment I filed for divorce, Elliot responded. That's all I needed to know, Nina said coldly. I'm sorry to bother you. She hung up, and her next call was to a divorce attorney. The following day, Evan called Laura, reprimanding her for exposing him through her act of revenge, which cost him his job and possibly his marriage. Despite losing her job and receiving Evan's angry call, Laura didn't back down. A week later, still no word from Elliot or his lawyer. Elliot took the next step. Laura's parents and sister received a copy of the DVD. After a brief introduction to the video, they began questioning Laura and reprimanding her. Elliot's old cell phone rang, and he answered his sister's call. How could you, Elliot? Laura loves you, Lila said, sounding concerned. She has a strange way of showing it, Elliot replied. It was revenge sex, for God's sake. She still hasn't told you the truth? Lila pressed. What the hell is the truth? Elliot asked, frustration evident in his voice. Lila, I wasn't having an affair. She got a call from a friend who said I did, and she took it as truth without any proof. This was her revenge, he explained. Elliot, Laura's not that stupid, Lila responded. Well, ask her yourself. Let her know that if she lets the divorce go through and stops fighting it, that's the end of it. If she keeps going, that's just the beginning, Elliot warned. Can't you deal with this? Lila asked. Have you watched the DVD? Elliot retorted. It's just the beginning. That's all I could digest. Lila was silent for a moment before asking, after all of this, ask yourself if your husband is willing to try to reconcile. Would you do that? I will, but I still think you should at least try to work it out. Lila, you've known me since we were kids. You know I'm not a bad guy. Watch the DVD. Okay, I will. Lila hung up the phone. About an hour later, she called back. Oh, Elliot, I'm so sorry. I understand now, but I still need to talk to Laura. Let her know that if she stops fighting the divorce, this will be the end of it. If she fights me, it's only going to get worse. I'll tell her, Elliot said. Lila went to see Laura in person. After confirming Elliot's story, she passed on his warning. Laura remained adamant in her refusal. Lila then told Laura's parents about what had happened and how Elliot insisted she drop the countersuit. That evening, Laura's parents visited her and received copies of both documents. Derek, a family friend who was a lawyer, reviewed the documents and the prenup. His recommendation was that Laura do exactly what Elliot suggested and quietly take the matter to divorce court. But Laura still refused to relent. A week passed without any word from his lawyer, and Elliot took the next step. Laura taught Sunday school at the same church her parents attended. That Sunday, every member of the Women's Auxiliary and the church ministers received a flyer in the mail, featuring pictures of Laura having sex with a man who was not her husband. The caption read, "Should this woman be teaching your children on Sunday?" After the service, Laura's parents were treated like pariahs rather than parishioners. The pastor took them aside for a private conversation and explained the situation. He also gave them a letter for Laura, informing them that her services would no longer be needed or welcomed at the church. A copy of the flyer was included when Laura received it. She cried but still refused to drop her counterclaim. Laura explained to her lawyer that sharing the video with her family was not a crime, as it was clear from the DVD where she had told Elliot she made it for him and that, since it was his property, he could share it with any adult he wanted. The flyers had been sent out anonymously, and without a thorough investigation, they could not be traced back to Elliot. Troy advised Laura to drop her countersuit. Her family begged her to let it go, as it was now affecting their lives. Derek called Elliot to express his concerns, but Elliot stuck to his demands. Still, Laura refused to relent. A few days later, Laura's neighbors and their friends received similar flyers, this time signed only with her name and contact information. Laura's phone and email were bombarded with nuisance calls and messages. Trash was dumped on her car, driveway, and lawn. Elliot waited another week before posting on her social media accounts. It began with innuendos, then escalated to photos with strategically placed blackouts covering all the right places. A few days later, Laura received an email from a porn site thanking her for the video. When a news crew showed up at her door, Laura finally called her lawyer and withdrew the countersuit. She requested a meeting with Elliot, which he agreed to, on the condition that it be held at his attorney's office. They met a few days later. Laura looked like a shadow of her former self. She had lost weight and appeared sleep-deprived. Elliot sat down across from her. "I've dropped the countersuit," he said. "You won." "No, Laura. I lost. I lost the woman I loved. I lost my marriage. I lost everything that was important to me. There's a side of you I've never seen before," Elliot admitted. "I'm sorry you had to see it," Laura responded softly. "I don't know what to say. I can't show my face anywhere. I'd have to leave just to get a job. I can't stay here either. Everyone we've ever known treats me like a leper," she said, her voice trembling. "We've both lost everything, haven't we?" "Yes, Laura, we did," Elliot said, his eyes welling with tears. "I know it's too late now, but is there anything I can do to undo what I've done? Besides figuring out how to turn back time?" she asked. "Yes, besides that," he said softly. "I don't think so," Laura replied quietly. Elliot stood up, preparing to leave. She stood as well and opened her arms for one last hug. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she reached out to him. Elliot took a step toward her, then stopped. He couldn't bring himself to do it. Tears fell down his own cheeks. "I can't, Laura. I'd feel like I was cheating on the woman I loved," he said, his voice cracking. He stood for a moment, gazing at her, then turned and headed for the door. When his hand touched the door handle, he stopped and turned back to her. "There's one thing that might help," he said quietly. "What's that?" Laura asked. "Just once, you could say I'm sorry." "Just once," Elliot said, his voice breaking. Then, with one last look, he walked out of the office and out of her life. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
I've always believed life unfolds like a series of lessons, often in ways you least expect. Growing up in a modest Midwest town, baseball became my sanctuary. From the crack of a bat to the chatter of teammates, it was where I felt alive and capable. I honed my skills through hours of practice with my dad, who cheered for every hit and consoled every strikeout, molding my resilience and determination. As the years went by, my passion for baseball collided with academic ambition. By the time I reached college, I balanced the grueling demands of my engineering courses with the intensity of collegiate sports. I thrived on the challenge, savoring both intellectual growth and the camaraderie of the field. Still, beneath my love for the game, a gnawing realization emerged. Talent only takes you so far without adaptability. When my baseball dreams dimmed, I funneled my energy into a budding career in engineering. I realized that chasing success off the field required as much focus and perseverance as swinging for the fences. That determination paved the way for a career I loved, teaching and mentoring students while tackling real-world problems alongside brilliant minds. I was thriving in a life filled with purpose and connection. Curveballs never came naturally to me, not in baseball and certainly not in life. My collegiate years saw me thriving as a batter who could anticipate and crush fastballs. That skill made me a star on campus, but limited my prospects for professional baseball. I leaned into my education, recognizing its long-term value. Fast forward 25 years past graduation and a decade and a half into my career, I found myself living my dream. I was a full-time professor at a Texas engineering school, actively consulting for government projects and overseeing a prominent manufacturing lab. Life felt like a home run. My wife Tessa and I had settled into our ideal home, and our daughter Tori, a civil engineering junior, was attending the same university where I taught. Everything seemed perfectly aligned. The curveball came suddenly, unexpected and devastating, a call from Tori. "Daddy, what's going on?" she asked, her voice filled with urgency. "I stopped by the house and saw movers. Mom said she's moving out and that you two are having problems. Why didn't you tell me?" Her words left me stunned. I hesitated before replying. "Are you sure? This isn't some kind of joke?" "No, Daddy," Tori insisted. "I'm standing here watching them pack. Come home. She won't tell me what's going on. Did you do something?" Her question cut deep. I knew I wasn't a perfect husband, but I couldn't think of anything to drive Tessa away. I rushed home, where Tori met me, visibly upset. "She hasn't explained anything," Tori said. "Dad, I'll support you if you didn't do something horrible, did you?" "No, honey, I haven't," I assured her. "Let's go talk to her." Tori, ever the defender of fairness, decided to record the encounter for her sister Talitha. We walked into the house where Tessa was directing movers. "Tessa, what's going on?" I asked. "I'm leaving, Dax," she said firmly. "I don't want to argue. It won't change anything and will only make me angry." Tori, furious, chimed in. "Mom, unless you explain this, you're only going to make me angrier. What are you doing?" Tessa, clearly uncomfortable, asked Tori to step outside to talk. Tori pulled her hand away, but we followed Tessa onto the deck. She shut the sliding door, paused, and finally said, "I met someone. He's new in town from New Mexico and works in real estate. I'm leaving to be with him. I've already filed for divorce, Dax." "Well, that's a shock," I replied. "You couldn't just cheat, could you? Instead, you had a magical connection and knew immediately he was the one?" Tori snorted. "Sure, Mom, that's how it works. How dumb do you think we are?" Tessa tried to respond, but Tori cut her off. "You're in real estate, Mom. No one tracks your time. How many showings or dinners did you have with Romeo?" "It's not like that," Tessa began. "Yes, it is," I said. "You don't just decide to leave your husband for a soulmate out of nowhere." "You're making it sound cheap," Tessa protested. "It is cheap," Tori snapped. "You're betraying Dad, and that's between you two. But what about me and Talitha? What's your plan for us?" "I love you both," Tessa said quickly. "That hasn't changed. I still love you, Dax, but nothing," Tori interjected. "You claim to love me, but how do you think I'm supposed to feel about you now, or how Talitha will feel about me?" "I know you're upset," Tessa said, "but you'll see nothing will change. You'll even come to love Charles once you know him." "Not happening," Tori hissed. "I want nothing to do with a guy who goes after a married woman. I'm telling Talitha everything. And you know what's already changed? I've lost all respect for you. Don't bother bringing him near me. I'll spit on him." "Tori," Tessa tried, but Tori cut her off again. "You don't know anything, Mom. I've never been so disappointed. You've ruined everything. God, I hate you." Tessa turned to me helplessly. "Dax." "Don't look at me," I said. "This is on you." Tessa seemed to realize the weight of her actions. She looked between us, but Tori grabbed my arm. "Let's go, Dad," she said. "I can't stay here with her." Tessa gasped at the insult, but Tori was already dragging me up the steps into her car. She opened the door for me, practically shoving me in. I felt like I was moving in slow motion, blindsided by everything. Tori got in, started the car, and turned to me. "Daddy, it's going to be okay," she said. "You're reeling, but I'll make it my mission to help you through this and see you happy again. Now buckle up. It's the law." I buckled up, grateful for her support. Tori always drove fast, and with her R8 V10 Plus Spider, her college graduation gift, She added a little extra edge to her usual speed. "Jesus, baby," I muttered as she sped down the road. "You're going to eliminate me before I have a chance to recover." She laughed, unapologetically. It was only 10 miles to the apartment she shared with Talitha, but we made it in record time. Tori and Talitha were opposites in personality, though almost identical in looks. It amazed me how two kids raised the same way could be so different. Tori was full of energy, always talking and buzzing with excitement. Talitha, in contrast, was quiet and affectionate, except when she played softball. Then she was a powerhouse on the field. When we arrived at their apartment, Talitha squealed, slid onto the couch, and patted the spot next to her. "Hey, Daddy, what's up?" she asked, wrapping her arms around me. Tori settled in on my other side. "Hi, sweetie," I said. "It's been a rough day." Her big blue eyes looked up at me. "What happened?" "You won't believe this." Tori jumped in. "I went to grab Daddy's jack and found Mom at the house with a moving truck. She said she's leaving him." Talitha froze. "What? You're kidding." I pulled her close. "I wish I was, baby." "What did you do?" she asked. My heart sank. Why did both my girls assume I'd done something wrong? "Dad didn't do anything," Tori said firmly. "It's Mom. She met some guy named Charles and thinks she's in love." "Seriously?" Talitha asked, shocked. Tori played her the recording, and Talitha burst into tears. Tori and I held her between us, comforting her as she sobbed. Through my own tears, I heard her whisper, "What are you going to do, Daddy?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "She's leaving. I can't stop her, and I'm not sure I'd want to at this point." Talitha wiped her eyes. "I need to hear it from her," she said. "If she says the same thing, I'll be furious and heartbroken." "I understand, sweetheart," I said. "I'm still in shock, too." Tori, more pragmatic, said, "Dad, you need to talk to a lawyer." Talitha frowned. "Jesus, Tori, listen to yourself. This is Mom we're talking about. Do you really think she's not capable of worse, considering she's already done this?" "It's surreal," Talitha murmured. "Like the Twilight Zone." "It is," Tori agreed. "But we have to deal with it." Talitha stood, determined. "I'm going to talk to her. Meet me for dinner later." She grabbed her bag and left. Tori leaned into me, and I wrapped an arm around her. We sat in silence for a while before she broke it. "Daddy, do you know any lawyers?" I blinked, pulled from my thoughts. "Yeah, but none for this kind of thing." "Call someone you trust and ask for a referral," she urged. I couldn't believe it had come to this. Hours ago, life felt normal. Now I was considering a divorce lawyer. After brainstorming, Tori and I settled on Amanda Sloan, highly recommended by one of my contacts. I scheduled an appointment, received a checklist of documents to bring, and prepared for the next step in this unexpected nightmare. I needed to head home to pack for the next day's reception. Tori offered to drive me and decided to pack for herself and Talitha as well, announcing that they'd be staying with me indefinitely. I protested, but she was firm, and I knew better than to argue. While I focused on gathering financial documents, Tori took it upon herself to help organize our accounts and log into the bank system. "Dad, you're not going to believe this," she said, her tone laced with disbelief. "What is it?" I asked, pausing to look at her. "You've got $50 in checking," she replied, "and $1,000 in a money market account. Is that just the minimum to avoid fees?" "Yes, but we should have much more than that," I replied, stunned. "Mom must have drained it," she said. "This isn't just cold, it's probably illegal." "I'll move some funds around," I said. "I got money in a credit union she can't touch." That evening, we met Talitha for dinner. She was visibly shaken. "I had to hear it from her myself," she said, wiping away tears. "I'm sorry I doubted you, but some things you need to hear firsthand." "You're not mad at me, are you?" I asked. "No, Dad, I understand," she said. Tori hugged her. I wouldn't have believed it either if I wasn't there. Talitha shared what she learned. "Mom wants us to meet Charles. She thinks we'll love him. I told her I wouldn't meet him. And honestly, I don't even want to see her. She lied to us. She cheated." Hearing that confirmed my worst fears. "I guess we know the truth now," I said. "I don't want anything to do with her either." But my emotions were in chaos. Grief, sadness, and above all, anger. The next day, Tori and Talitha drove me to meet Amanda Sloan, a no-nonsense lawyer who wasted no time. Within 2 days, she filed divorce papers, froze our finances, and demanded Tessa return any withdrawn funds. Neither of us could touch the accounts except for daily expenses. Soon after, Tessa called. "Why are you being so difficult, Dax?" she asked. "Difficult?" I echoed. You're the one who left. She insisted on talking in person. When she arrived and saw the girls, she asked, "Why are you here?" "We live here," Talitha said bluntly. Tori added, "We're not leaving Dad alone." Then they grabbed their bags and left without acknowledging her further. Tessa sat across from me and sighed. I don't want this to be harder than it has to be. I still love you, but I need to be with Charles. We can still be friends for the girls' sake. Friends? I said. I don't have friends who treat me like this, or enemies for that matter. Why did you freeze the accounts? She asked. You drained them, I replied. You have a job, Tessa. You earn good money. But you have accounts at the credit union, she said, which you've never contributed to, I reminded her. When we were together, it was ours. Now it's mine. Let the courts decide. By the way, wasn't Charles a roller skating enthusiast? She wrinkled her nose. His name is Charles. Stop being childish. I don't care what you think, I shot back. Is there anything else? The girls, she said. They're furious. You must have said something to them. Me? I asked incredulously. They don't need me to tell them anything. They can see for themselves what you've done. How long has this been going on? Why didn't you ever tell me you were unhappy? We could have tried to fix it. Tessa looked wistful. I wasn't unhappy, she said. Have you ever met someone and felt an instant connection? Like magnets? Yes, I replied. When I met you. She avoided my gaze. Can't we move on? We don't have to be angry. We've loved each other too long to let it go like this. We can still be friends. I don't want to be your friend, Tessa, I said. After the divorce, I doubt we'll have a reason to talk. The girls will bring us together. Graduations, weddings, their lives go on, she countered. Maybe, I said. I'll handle what I need to. I'm still the same person, she added. You used to like me. No, I didn't. Or if I did, I never really knew you. I'm done. You can leave, I said firmly. Tessa sighed and left. Needing space, I drove to the river, parked, and stood by the water to clear my head. After a while, a voice interrupted my thoughts. Hi, Daddy, Talitha said, walking up to me. Hi, doll. How'd you find me? The family tracker, she said, grinning. You insisted we keep it. I laughed, and she leaned into me. It's beautiful here, she said. What did Mom want? I sighed. She wanted to know why I froze the accounts and said we should be friends. She claims we'll need to stay connected for you and Tori. Talitha was quiet for a moment. Tori and I already talked. We won't invite her to anything. We miss her, but we can't go through this with her. You're sure? I asked. She nodded. Yeah, let's grab dinner. How about Mexican food? We called Tori, but she was busy, so it was just me and Talitha. Over time, things settled. The divorce was finalized after several meetings, and the girls stayed with me for 2 weeks. Eventually, I insisted they move back to their apartment. I love having you here, I told them. But you need to get back to your lives. I'll always be here for you. Okay, Daddy, Talitha said. We don't want you to feel lonely. Then call, visit, or invite me out. Do what you've always done. After hugs and sniffles, they agreed. They checked in often, and when the divorce was final, they stayed with me for another week. They didn't mention their mom, and I didn't ask. I poured myself into work, taking on more projects and classes to stay busy. I missed being married, the comfort of a partner, the small acts of care, but slowly I healed. It took a year to feel better, then 2. By then, Tori was finishing her PhD, and Talitha had paused her studies to work at a mortgage company. Both were thriving, and I was proud of them. Life moved forward, as it always does. Tessa occasionally disrupted our lives, like at Talitha's graduation, where she overheard plans to celebrate and insisted on joining us. Mom, shouldn't you hurry back to Chucky Boy? Tori asked. Her face darkened. Charles and I broke up, she said. Oh, really? When? Talitha asked. If you'd talked to me, you'd know. It's been 18 months, Tessa replied. Well, we've been busy, Tori said dryly. I couldn't help but laugh, earning a glare from Tessa. We all drove separately to the barbecue restaurant. We managed to find her a seat, though the girls made it clear they didn't want her there. She left shortly after dinner, and I left for Tarawa the next day to work on a resort project as a consultant and shareholder. Tarawa was stunning. Pristine beaches and vibrant oceans. I spent time at clubs, met new people, danced, and even had a couple of flings. It was refreshing, and I returned ready to start living again. The idea of revisiting California and my old neighborhood crossed my mind. I decided to take the motor home, towing a Wrangler for local trips. After stocking up, I hit the road. Traveling was a blast. I stayed at campgrounds, attended events, and met many people, mostly couples, which made being single feel a bit lonely. It took 3 weeks to reach my destination due to frequent stops. Once there, I explored Ventura, Santa Barbara, and Ojai for a few days. One afternoon, I was at a coffee shop in Ojai when a commotion caught my attention. A woman, clearly a Karen, was causing trouble over a mask policy. Annoyed, I focused on the people waiting outside. One woman gave up, sat at a nearby table, and pulled out her phone. She looked oddly familiar. When she went inside, it hit me. Her walk sparked a memory. Jacinta de Leon, I murmured. How could I forget? Jacinta had moved to my town in 3rd grade. She was magnetic, huge, dark brown eyes and a radiant smile. She quickly became my best friend. We walked home together every day, coordinated class schedules, and spent nearly all our time together. By junior high, I was completely in love with her. Unfortunately, my feelings weren't mutual. To her, I was just her best friend. I stayed silent, afraid of ruining what we had. I gritted my teeth through her string of boyfriends, enduring the heartache while cherishing the moments we spent together, like when she always saved a couple of dances for me at school events. One day, while playing cribbage in my room, Jacinta asked, "Dax, why don't you have a girlfriend?" I stammered, unable to admit the truth, that the girl I wanted didn't see me that way. "I'll help you," she declared cryptically. Soon, a parade of her beautiful friends started showing up, her idea of matchmaking. We remained close until she moved to Los Angeles and I to Texas. Years later, she reappeared, even more stunning than before. Now, an elegant woman with an air of independence. She wore a beige silk dress and black low-heeled shoes that highlighted her legs. Sitting in a coffee shop, flipping through her phone, she suddenly looked up, her eyes lighting up as she recognized me. "Dax, oh my God, is it really you?" she squealed, rushing over and nearly knocking me over in a hug, just like when we were kids. "It's been ages," she said excitedly. "What are you doing here? Are you alone? Is your family with you?" I carefully disentangled myself, wary of the hot coffee she held. "Take a seat before you scald me," I said, laughing. She sat down, pulling me into another hug. It felt like we were kids again, sitting side by side on the cafeteria bench. "Why are you here?" she asked. "How long are you staying?" "I'm touring the country in my van, revisiting the old neighborhood," I explained. "I've been here a few days with no real plans." She nodded. "I moved here 3 years ago, opened a real estate office, and business is booming. What are you doing tonight? We need to catch up." Her enthusiasm was contagious. "No plans," I said. "I decide what to do each day as it comes." "Wait," she said, suddenly serious. "Aren't you married? Where's your wife?" "I'm divorced," I admitted. "It's a long story." She brushed it off. "I don't have time for that. You're taking me to dinner tonight. I have a fashion show in 20 minutes. Give me your number." I handed it over, and she immediately texted me. "Wear a collared shirt," she teased, as she rushed off, leaving me grinning. Later, I remembered her love for turquoise and bought her a handmade silver bracelet and matching anklet from a jewelry shop. I dressed in black slacks and a pink button-down shirt, sprayed on cologne, and drove to the address she sent me. Her house left me speechless. It was a stunning historic property in Ojai, complete with gardens, wrought iron fencing, and a guest house. The grand stucco home was worth millions. I couldn't help but feel a little intimidated. I parked on the street, honked at the gate, and walked in. The property was stunning. Fountains, colorful flowers, a koi pond, and mature avocado trees everywhere. In front of the garage sat a green late 60s Jaguar E-Type. The place was breathtaking, a clear testament to Jacinta's success. When I rang the doorbell, the deep, resonant chime matched the house's elegance. Jacinta opened the door and I froze. She giggled at my expression. "Cat got your tongue?" she teased. "You know how you look, Jacinta. You're still the most beautiful woman I've ever seen," I said. She hugged me tightly. "God, I've missed you, Dax." "I brought you something," I said, handing her a gift. She opened it and squealed with delight, pulling out the turquoise jewelry. "You remembered," she said, beaming. We headed toward the gate, her hand in mine. "Are you sure you want to take the Jeep?" I asked. She laughed. "What, you think I'm too fancy for a Jeep? I'm still me, Dax." I chuckled. "You're just looking a little too glamorous for it. And judging by this place, you're doing really well." She grinned. "I've worked hard. Right now, I'm wrapping up a big real estate deal at Lake Casitas. Property here is insane. As we drove, she shared snippets of her journey, starting in West Covina, working for a big agency, then founding her own. Enough about me. Tell me about you, she said. I handed her my iPad to scroll through pictures of my daughters. Your girls are gorgeous, she said. Is this your wife? Ex-wife, I clarified. We divorced 3 years ago. I'm sorry, is it still a sore subject? I shrugged. Not anymore. What about you? I don't see a ring. She shook her head. No marriage for me. I had a long relationship, but it ended 4 years ago. I don't like talking about it much. We chatted about our lives. I mentioned how close I was with my daughters and that they might join me later on my trip. Jacinta smiled warmly. That's so sweet. And you? Any kids? I asked. No, just me, she said. I always thought I'd be a terrible mom. My mother was incredible, and I'd never measure up. Her honesty made her all the more endearing. We arrived at the restaurant, and Jacinta held my hand as we walked inside. Once the food arrived, she started talking, just like when we were kids. The guy I was with was another real estate agent, she said. We talked about him moving in, but things never worked out. Her expression turned serious. That's the part I don't like to talk about. I squeezed her hand. You don't have to, Jacinta. No, I do, she insisted. He was working with me on a big deal and cheated me. He bought land without doing his homework, and it backfired. Right in the middle of the property was 200 acres owned by the city. It was gifted with restrictions, no development for 50 years. What happened? I asked. She sighed, recalling the story. He tried to get me to buy into it, claiming he could fix it. He couldn't. He resorted to shady deals and bribery, got caught, and ended up in jail. Luckily, I sensed something was off and I didn't get involved. So you left? I asked, leaning in. Yeah, she said with a nod. After Bob went to prison, I sold my agency and moved back home. Best decision of my life, and then I ran into you. I was just as surprised to see you, I said, smiling. Her expression brightened. Are you excited? Of course, I replied. I didn't expect to find you here. I was just revisiting old places, planning to head to the coast. How long are you staying? She asked. I've got nowhere to be until fall semester, I said. Even then, my classes are online. My only real work commitment is in December. Her face lit up. If I clear my schedule, can I join you for a walk? That is, if you don't have other plans. I do, I said. Her face fell. And they'll all be better with you. Her eyes sparkled. Really? Then let's do everything on your list. Her enthusiasm made me laugh. You haven't changed, Jacinta. She grinned mischievously. Oh, I've changed. I'm smarter. And I keep finding hair in weird places, she whispered with a smirk. I burst out laughing, and soon we had the entire restaurant's attention with our antics. Spending time with Jacinta was pure joy. She was smart, funny, and full of life. As I walked her to the door, she chatted nonstop, making plans for our next outing. At the door, she hugged me tightly before leaving. The following 2 weeks were incredible, filled with laughter and excitement I hadn't felt in years. Jacinta was like a breath of fresh air, making life feel vibrant and new, much like when we were kids. It made me realize how stagnant things had been with Tessa, where routine had taken over. I started noticing the way Jacinta looked at me, her warm brown eyes with flecks of gold and green glowing in the sunlight. She hadn't mentioned my 2-week timeline, and neither had I. 3 weeks had passed, and I had no intention of leaving. We spent nearly every day together, always planning when we'd see each other next before parting ways. After nearly 2 months together, Jacinta invited me in after a day of antique shopping. We were snuggled on her couch sipping whiskey with an old kung fu show playing in the background. Suddenly, I noticed she had gone quiet. Turning to her, I saw her looking at me, her eyes soft and liquid. Is something wrong, Peaches? I asked. No. Yes. Maybe, she replied hesitantly. I chuckled. That clears things up. Dax, she began. Why are you still here? Are you just spending time with an old friend, or is this something more? I hesitated. It started as friendship, but what do you think it is? It's more than friends for me, she admitted. I loved you back then, and I think I still do. Why didn't you ever ask me out? You were my best friend, I said. I was terrified it would ruin everything if you didn't feel the same. I wanted you to, she whispered. I tried so hard to get your attention, but was too scared to ask you myself. You were the girl of my dreams, I admitted. I just didn't know you felt the same. Do you still dream about it? She asked softly. If you don't plan to stay, she continued, you should go now. I can't fall for you again if you're going to leave. I'm not leaving, I assured her. I have responsibilities, my girls, and work, but I can stay. She smiled. We'll figure it out, but right now, I want something else. She led me to the bedroom, and the night felt like stepping back into my 20s. In the weeks that followed, we spent nearly every moment together. Time slipped by, and suddenly, 4 months had passed. My daughters, Tori and Talitha, began questioning how long I planned to stay in California. I wanted to tell them about Jacinta in person, but plans changed when I got a text from Talitha. Dad, I'm visiting for a week. Flying into LA Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Can you pick me up? Of course, doll, I can't wait, I replied. I told Jacinta. Talitha is coming to stay for a week. Uh-oh, she said, cuddling closer. You need to tell them about us. I'm not hiding for a week. I want to meet them. They look like girls I'd love. I want you to meet them too, I said. I plan to talk to them in person, but now I'll suggest a Zoom call so everyone can get to know each other. Perfect, she said. When? I'll arrange it for Monday night. Do you have plans? Nope, she said, smiling. Let's do it. I managed to get the girls on a Zoom call, though they were suspicious about my motives. After some casual chatting, I finally worked up the courage to speak. I know I've been mysterious, I began. I was going to talk to you in person, but I've met someone. Tori smirked. Dad, we're not dumb. We figured it out. Talitha added, Yeah, you're not slick. Who is she? I grinned. Girls, I want you to meet her. Be nice, okay? Jacinta walked in, sat on my lap, and I introduced her. This is Jacinta de Leon. She was my best friend in high school, and we've reconnected. She's the reason I've been here so long. Tori and Talitha were initially stunned, but quickly warmed up. God, Dad, she's gorgeous, Tori said. Talitha added, We're the gatekeepers, Jacinta. You've got to impress us. Jacinta laughed. I'd expect nothing less. I love your dad, and I hope to be a part of both his and your lives. I'm not here to take him away from you. Tori replied, We just miss him being in California all the time. Jacinta assured them, We'll figure it out. I want to meet you both and make this work. The conversation flowed easily, with the girls joking and sharing stories about me. When the call ended, I turned to Jacinta. So, what do you think? They're amazing, she said, smiling. Smart, funny, and definitely your daughters. When Talitha arrived, I picked her up at the airport. Seeing her took my breath away. My little girl had grown into a beautiful, confident woman. She hugged me tightly and chatted non-stop as we grabbed burgers at In-N-Out. By the time we got to the van, she was still full of energy, excited to see how it converted into a home. She was thrilled with the setup. Later, I told her we were going to Jacinta's for dinner. She lit up, quickly showered and changed, and then declared herself ready. I got cleaned up and we headed off to what I knew would be a memorable evening. Talitha kept commenting on the scenery and neighborhoods as we drove, and the closer we got to Yasina's house, the more impressed she seemed. When we reached the gate, I entered the code. As we pulled into the driveway, Talitha gave me a wide-eyed look. Daddy, your girlfriend lives here? You've got way more game than I thought. I laughed. She's a big-time real estate developer. You'd never guess it from high school. She's Hispanic. Her parents came here from Honduras 5 years before she was born. Her dad worked in an almond orchard and eventually owned it, and her mom ran a small tamal farm. Back then, she did everything on her own. Wow, Talitha said, clearly amazed. We parked and headed inside. Jacinta was in the kitchen, and when she and Talitha saw each other, they froze for a second, then broke into big smiles and rushed to hug. What are you cooking? Talitha asked. It smells incredible, Jacinta smiled. Dinner's going to be spicy. Do you like spicy food? Hell yes, Talitha said. You can call me Tally if you want, Jacinta said. Tori and your dad do. Thanks, but I like Jacinta, Talitha replied. I can switch if you want. Jacinta laughed. I'm fine with Jacinta. Let's talk spice. Jacinta kissed me quickly before leading Talitha to the stove. She opened the oven, releasing a heavenly aroma. These are lamb ribs loaded with spices, she said. We'll shred the meat for tortillas with pico de gallo, brown rice, and refried beans. Dax, can you pick some avocados? There should be plenty on the trees. Oh my God, Talitha said. You just pick avocados? Jacinta chuckled. Yeah, we have lots of trees. I want to go, Talitha said. Need any help, Jacinta? No, just peeling and slicing the avocados later. You go with your dad while I set the table. I grabbed a basket and Talitha and I walked around picking ripe avocados. "This place is amazing," she said. "And Jacinta's even prettier in person. You're doing great, Dad." I laughed. "Thanks, doll. I'm glad you like her. I love her, you know." "Yeah, I can tell," she said. "She loves you too. You can see it." Dinner was as delicious as it smelled. Sitting at Jacinta's large table with two stunning women was a treat. I offered to do the dishes, and when I finished, Jacinta and Talitha were on the couch with a laptop, whispering. They quickly closed it as I walked in, and Jacinta patted the seat between them. "Uh-oh," I said. "What are you two plotting?" "What?" Talitha asked, feigning innocence. "He's paranoid," Jacinta teased. "Old people, right?" I smirked. "We're the same age." "Yeah, but you're the paranoid one," Talitha said. "Not true," I said, "but I know you've been scheming against me since forever." "All for your benefit," she replied. They finalized plans that didn't include me, and after playing a few games, we headed back to the van. Talitha kept glancing at me, her expression unreadable, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. "What?" I finally asked. "I like her, Daddy," she said, a small smile forming. "You're lucky." "I know, right?" I replied, chuckling. "Don't let her get away," she added, her tone turning serious. "Good thing I'm here to keep you in line." "Ha! If anything, you being here might cause trouble," I teased. "But I'm glad you're here. I knew you'd like her." She paused, her expression growing thoughtful. "How do you think Mom will react?" "It's not her business," I said firmly. "I'm not seeing her or asking her, so I don't care." Talitha tilted her head slightly. "I see her sometimes, and so does Tori. What should I tell her if she asks about you?" "She asks about me?" I asked, surprised. "Yeah," Talitha admitted. "She always does." I had no idea. "Are you lying to her?" She laughed. "No, but I don't say much. Mostly that you're fine. If I have to, I'll just tell her you met someone." "Do what feels right," I said with a nod. "I trust you. You're smarter than me." "Smarter?" She giggled, flashing the smile that had melted my heart since she was a baby. We had a great week. Sometimes just me and Talitha, sometimes all three of us, and occasionally Talitha and Jacinta went off on their own. By the time Talitha returned to Austin, she and Jacinta were planning our next get-together. Tori flew in 3 weeks later, and her reaction to Jacinta was just as positive. We were on a roll. I stayed in California until consulting work called. After talking to Tori, Talitha, and Jacinta, we decided to take a working vacation. Jacinta and I flew to Tarawa, and the girls arrived the next evening. I worked during the day while they explored, and we spent the evenings in paradise. By the end, I had 3 tan women and 2 daughters who adored Jacinta. I had to head back to Austin to do some real work in my office, which was going to take about 2 weeks. Jacinta flew in the second weekend. The girls picked her up Friday morning, and she spent the day with them while I finished up. We met for dinner, and she stayed with me. Sunday night, we planned to take the girls for a walk, but their mother chose that day for one of her rare unannounced visits. She knew that giving notice would mean they'd suddenly become busy, so she always tried to surprise them. When Jacinta and I arrived, she was already at their apartment, making things awkward as hell. Tori introduced Jacinta as Daddy's girlfriend, and the shock on Tessa's face was unmistakable. The girls tried to usher her out, saying we had a date, but she wouldn't leave. "So, how did you meet Dax?" she asked Jacinta. Jacinta smiled. "I sat across from him in math class." Tessa looked confused. "You're both taking a class?" I laughed. "No, this was when we were 10 years old." "You've known each other since you were 10? Tessa asked, baffled. "Why haven't I heard of or met you before?" Jacinta explained. "We lost touch for a long time and only reconnected this year," Tori cut in before things got worse. "Mom, we'd love to chat, but we have plans." Tessa snorted unhappily, but Tori firmly guided her out. The look on her face could have curdled milk. Once she was gone, Talitha turned to Jacinta apologetically. "I'm so sorry, that was awkward. She showed up 5 minutes before you and didn't want to leave." Jacinta laughed. "It's okay. It was bound to happen eventually. I have my place in your lives, and I'm here for you." Over dinner and later at home, the girls and I finally confronted the conversation we'd all been avoiding. Talitha, clearly nominated as the spokesperson, broke the silence. "Daddy, what are your immediate and long-term plans?" she asked, her tone direct. "Plans for what?" I replied, trying to deflect. She didn't waver. "I mean, do you plan to spend the rest of your life living in a van in California, or is there a bigger picture?" I laughed. "No, I don't plan to live in a van forever. Jacinta and I haven't discussed the long term yet." Tori chimed in. "Mind if we hang around while you two talk about it?" I looked at Jacinta. I don't mind, she said. I know how much your father means to you, and I know how much you mean to him. But you should also know that I love him, and I'm not letting him go. Tori nodded. We know, Talitha added. We don't like how far away you live. Dad, I've been talking to people at work, and Jacinta and I have discussed it too. I'm going to get my broker's license, and she and I are starting a real estate business here. I raised an eyebrow at Jacinta. Really? You didn't mention this. She giggled. Yes, Dax, I'm planning to leave my business in Ojai. Talitha and I see a huge market opportunity here, and we've been brainstorming. I'm listening, I said. I want us all together, she said. My idea is this. I want you to live with me in Ojai for 6 months of the year. I'll hire an office manager, and we'll spend 3 months here while Talitha runs the business. The other 3 months, I want us to live in Tarawa. I fell in love with the place, and as the resort owner, I can manage that. That's a plan, I said. But what about the interruptions? As expected, things didn't always go perfectly. Business in Austin often pulled us back from Ojai, and vice versa. Despite the back and forth, we stuck to our Tarawa schedule, and Tori and Talitha frequently joined us there. One afternoon, about 3 months into our Austin stint, Talitha texted me with a photo. Hey, Dad, the message read. What's up? I replied. Just reviewing bridge inspection schedules. Can we grab lunch at 1? Sure, I answered. Does Ichiyumi sound good? Perfect, she responded. When I arrived at the restaurant, the hostess led me to a booth where Talitha was seated with another young woman. After the waitress took my drink order, Talitha turned to me with a smile. Dad, this is Campbell Martin, she said. My girlfriend. I was stunned, jaw practically on the floor. Campbell didn't take it well. Screw this, she said. Let me out of here. I don't need this. Wait, Campbell, please, Talitha pleaded. I didn't mean for this to go sideways. I snapped out of it. Campbell, I'm sorry. My reaction wasn't about you. Talitha never told me she was gay. You surprised me, that's all. It's my fault, Talitha admitted. I should have prepared you. Campbell relaxed a bit. She's my first girlfriend. I didn't think it needed explaining. I turned to Talitha. Did you think I'd love you less? You've always had my heart, you know that. Her smile returned, and with it, the warmth that had defined our bond from the start. She started crying just as the food arrived, then jumped up and rushed to the restroom. Campbell turned to me, her eyes narrowed. Damn, man, why'd you say that? Campbell, I don't know you, I said. If you're Talitha's girlfriend, I'll get to know you. But you don't know me either, so stop feuding and swearing at me. It doesn't help. Honestly, though, don't you think being a lesbian is something you'd tell your parents? She shook her head. I wouldn't know. I don't have parents, but you don't get it either. It's not easy. Let me ask you, if you have a secret, love someone deeply, and don't want to disappoint them or hurt them, would you risk sharing it and getting hurt? I sighed. I don't know. I don't know what I said or did to make Tally feel like she couldn't trust me. Maybe I wasn't as present as I should have been. Talitha came back with her makeup freshly applied, masking her tears. I grabbed her hand and pulled her close. I love you with all my heart, I told her. You're my doll, and nothing will ever change that. Now go sit by your girlfriend. She sat next to Campbell, looking apologetic. I'm sorry, Daddy, I just... Shh, I interrupted. It's over. We won't talk about it again. Now, tell me how you met Campbell. She smiled. She was a pitcher on the Florida State team. We met at a tournament. Love at first sight? I asked. Campbell laughed. It was for me. But she had a boyfriend, so we stayed friends. And then? I asked. Until I moved here for a job, she said. What do you do? I asked. If you're okay with it, she replied. I don't mind, she said. I'm a software developer. She looked at Talitha, then back at me, rolling her eyes. He's testing me, huh? Will I pass? I laughed. You're a beautiful woman, Campbell. You don't need my approval, but I see what you're doing. Campbell raised an eyebrow. If I were your father, you'd fail the test. You're gorgeous, but you're too exposed. What the hell? Lucky you're not my father. Campbell, you're the one who asked him, Talitha said with a giggle. I like the way she looks, Daddy. I raised my hands in surrender. That's all that matters. Despite the rocky start, the conversation ended on a good note, and we parted amicably. The next evening, Tori stopped by and dropped a bombshell. Daddy, I hear you met Campbell, she said, giving me a knowing look. Tori, did you know about her? Did you know Talitha is bi? I asked, still processing. She sighed, clearly expecting the question. Yes, Daddy, I've always known. And before you get any ideas, if you ever keep a secret from me, I won't snitch on you either. Deal? Fair enough, I said. How well do you know Campbell? Pretty well, Tori replied. Tally told me a lot back in college, but I'll be honest, she wasn't always great. What do you mean? I asked, curious. She had a steady girlfriend once and cheated on her, Tori explained. Tally wasn't happy about it, so they stopped hanging out for a while. Wow, I didn't know that, I said, surprised. She's an adult now, Dad, Tori said with a shrug. Let her live her life. I get that, but if you were dating someone like that... A sudden thought struck me. Tori, she laughed. No, Dad, if I'm finding a life partner, it'll be a guy. After Tori left, Jacinta came home, and I decided to tell her about meeting Campbell. Her reaction caught me off guard. Oh no, I said, don't tell me you knew too. She hesitated before replying. Yes, Dax, Talitha told me she planned to talk to you. Why am I always the last to know important things about my daughter? I asked, frustrated. Jacinta laughed lightly. Because you're a man, Dax. Girls talk to women more easily. Well, I don't like it, I grumbled. Did you know Campbell cheated on an old girlfriend? Tori told me. And does that bother you? She asked. She was young, but yes, it does, I admitted. Jacinta frowned, her tone turning serious. Dax, they were 19 or 20. Didn't you make mistakes at that age? Yes, but not cheating, I replied firmly. The tension from the conversation lingered for a few days until I finally confronted Talitha. I'm worried about you, I told her, especially about Campbell. You know how awful it was when your mom cheated? Talitha's expression hardened. Yeah, I know. I'm the one who told you, remember? And now you think Campbell's the same? That pisses me off. She stormed out, ignoring my calls and texts afterward. Jacinta wasn't happy either. When she got home that evening, she demanded, What did you say to Talitha? Did she tell you? I asked. Yes, Jacinta replied sharply. She came to the office crying. Why did you say that? Because I'm worried about her, I said defensively. Jacinta's frustration was palpable. You're projecting, Dax. Campbell's a sweet girl who's grown up. Stop interfering. I just want to protect my daughter, I said quietly. Then let her live her life, she snapped. Your worry feels more like control. For the first time since we'd been together, my voice rose in anger. You're meddling, and she's not even your daughter. Jacinta looked at me like I'd slapped her. You're an idiot, she said quietly. How could you say that to me? She is my daughter. Ask her. I know you've been hurt, Dax, but taking it out on me or Talitha with a comment like that is just petty and mean. She turned and walked away, her back rigid with anger. Moments later, I heard her footsteps in the bedroom. I sat there fuming for another half hour before she came out, this time with suitcases. What are you doing? I asked. I'm going back to Ojai, she said. When you pull your head out of your A, call me. Her eyes brimmed with tears, her voice trembling. I'm not staying here with you like this. She walked out, leaving me stunned. How had it escalated to this? Why couldn't she understand my perspective? Why couldn't Talitha? I spent the rest of the day sulking and barely slept that night, haunted by the memory of Jacinta's wounded expression. The next morning, I stumbled through a mental fog, managing to pour myself nothing more than a bowl of cereal. At 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there stood Campbell, the last person I wanted to see. I sighed and stepped aside to let her in. Without hesitation, she strode past me into the hallway, exuding confidence. We need to talk, she said firmly. But first, I want coffee. Strong, black. I just stood there, momentarily dumbfounded by her boldness. Dax, she pressed, crossing her arms. Either you make me coffee or we're done talking. I'm furious with you, but I also understand you. So what's it going to be? Coffee, or are you throwing in the towel? I couldn't help but laugh despite myself. Feisty, bold, and stunning in her ripped jeans and crop top, she was impossible to ignore. All right, I said, heading to the kitchen. Coffee it is, just don't kick my A, Campbell. She grinned. I could, I'm a damn good kickboxer. Somehow I'm not surprised, I said. I've got some Blue Mountain beans. Want to try them? Sure, she said, leaning casually against the counter. By the way, I've always dreamed of owning my own coffee shop someday. Not one of those chains, though. As I ground the beans and set up the espresso machine, she sat at the bar, chatting about her vision for her shop. I handed her a cup of freshly brewed coffee, and she took a sip, nodding approvingly. This is amazing, she said, setting the cup down and resting her face in her hands, her dark eyes locked onto mine. Dax, you're crazy, I chuckled. Probably, but what makes you say that this time? Talitha's devastated, she said, and honestly, so am I. She doesn't understand you, but I do. I frowned. You do? Enlighten me. I understand, she said. Your wife, Talitha's mom, cheated on you. Talitha told you that? I asked. She did, Campbell said. And she also told me how devastated both of you were. So what are you getting at, Campbell? I asked, leaning back slightly. You see Talitha with me and you're afraid, she said, meeting my gaze directly. Tori's probably told you about my past, about what I did. You think I'll cheat on her, don't you? You think I'll break her heart, just like your wife broke yours. I sighed, unable to deny the accusation. And what do you plan to do about it? I'm going to show you who I really am, she said, her tone steady. You're going to get to know me, and I'll let you see what it's like to be me. Fair enough, I replied. You're off to a good start. She smiled, her dazzling white teeth contrasting with her golden skin. Dax, I know what I look like. I've been hit on by men and women alike since I was young. Not surprising, I said. You're beautiful, Campbell. Thank you, she said softly, her expression briefly vulnerable. Talitha probably hasn't told you much about women's college sports, has she? In softball, most players are lesbians. I'd say maybe 10 of my teammates weren't. I raised an eyebrow. That's quite the minority. It is, she agreed. Now imagine being young and surrounded by that environment. I was a sophomore when I started dating another girl. We were together for a year. I didn't cheat on her, and as far as I know, she didn't cheat on me. What happened? I asked. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I was invited to an elite skills camp run by 2 legendary players I idolized. It was a huge opportunity, so of course I went. And then? I prompted. Well, she said, her voice tinged with both excitement and regret. These legends weren't just interested in me as a player. They started taking me to fancy dinners, clubs, concerts, experiences I'd never had before. They pushed me to the edge. I frowned. You're saying they crossed the line? Campbell nodded. That's where you'll have to use your imagination, Dax. These women were everything I'd ever admired, and they took advantage of that. I was silent, trying to process her story, the layers of complexity in her life that I hadn't considered. She seemed to sense my struggle and sipped her coffee, waiting for me to respond. Tears shimmered in her deep brown eyes before slipping down her cheeks. Watching her pain was breaking my heart, and I finally understood how hard it was for her to share this with me. She was doing it because she loved Talitha and knew how much my daughter meant to me. In her vulnerability, she was reaching out, needing me to trust her. I realized I had to stop this hurt. I was the one causing it. Grabbing some tissues from the counter, I walked around, handed them to her, and gently pulled her to her feet before wrapping her in a hug. At first, she was stiff and resistant, but I held her close and spoke softly. Campbell, I'm so sorry. You don't need to say any more. I understand, okay? I know how hard this was for you, and I made it necessary. Please forgive me. Slowly, she melted into my arms, pressing against me as sobs shook her body. I whispered reassurances, promising that everything would be okay, that I would fix things, and apologizing for not giving her a chance. After a while, her tears subsided, and I carried her to the couch in the living room. She curled up beside me, and we spent hours talking. As dinner time approached, I cooked for her, and she helped by staying close, leaning into me as if we'd known each other forever. Despite the differences between her and my daughters, it felt like I had another daughter in the room. We drank 2 bottles of wine, and by the end of the night, she was a happy, giggling drunk. She stayed over, sleeping in Talitha's room, and the next morning she called Talitha and invited her over for breakfast. When Talitha walked in, Campbell and I were side by side at the stove, chatting easily as we made pancakes. Campbell had one arm draped around me, and Talitha marched right over, stepping between us. "What are you doing here, Campbell?" she asked. "What, like Dad, I came to enlighten your poor, clueless father," I said with a grin. Talitha shot me a sharp look. "Campbell, what did you say to him?" "Nothing bad, Tally," Campbell said with a smile. "I just came to fix things. He's an overprotective dad, and now I get it." Talitha turned to me. "Daddy, what did you say to Campbell?" "I'm sorry for how I acted," I said. "I understand why you love her and how much she loves you. Will you forgive me?" She threw her arms around me. "I love you, Daddy, and I always will." It's easy to forgive you, but I need to apologize too. I thought you were just being an idiot. Campbell and I exchanged amused glances. I kinda was, I said. And I kinda was too, she admitted. Campbell smirked. We've all had our moments. Campbell and Jacinta helped me see things clearly, I said. I know you love me and care about me. I just wish I'd confided in you sooner. I wish I'd done the same, Talitha replied. And I wish I'd answered Jacinta's calls. Well, you've got work to do, I said. I said some terrible things to her. I know, Talitha said. She told me. What did you say? Campbell asked. She didn't tell me. I said Talitha was my daughter, not hers. Campbell made a small clucking sound. I don't think Tally agrees with you on that. Talitha nodded. Technically, you're right, but emotionally, you're wrong. I'm closer to Jacinta than I ever was to Mom. I wish she was my mom. You need to apologize to her. What? I said, incredulous. Campbell grinned. Hope you like crow, dude, because you're about to eat a whole homicide. We all laughed, finished breakfast, and had a wonderful morning. I knew I couldn't waste time. 2 days later, I flew to LA, rented a car, stopped by a flower shop, and bought every rose they had. Jacinta wasn't home, so I let myself in, filled her house with roses, and knelt in the hallway when she returned. She froze, startled, as I said, I've pulled my head out of my I'm so sorry, Peach. Please forgive me. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she ran across the entryway and hugged me tightly. She pressed her cheek to the top of my head, her curls falling like a veil around me. I hate being mad at you, she whispered. I'm sorry too, Dax. I know you meant well, but I guess it felt like we were all ganging up on you. We need to communicate better, all of us. I gladly ate that crow. We flew back to Austin and went rafting in Colorado with all the girls. That was my family now, and I decided Campbell was part of it too, a fiery, wild jungle cat of a new daughter. 3 years later, they were all with us in Tarawa when I proposed to Jacinta. The girls helped with the plan, and as Jacinta and I finished dinner, I got down on one knee before dessert. Her hand flew to her mouth, and she burst into tears, catching me off guard, but I slipped the ring on her finger and she pulled me to my feet, throwing herself into my arms, still crying. Peach, I said. I was hoping this would make you happy, not bring tears of despair. She giggled softly, snuggling into my shoulder. I am happy. I cry when I'm really happy too. It was a small curveball, but I knew I'd knocked it out of the park. Our family was complete.
Welcome to Cheating Tales Lab. We hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Ethan Hawthorne's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at the screen, seeing his wife Olivia's name. Medical conference in Chicago next week. Don't forget. Ethan's lips curved into a smile. He had an idea. With Olivia out of town, he could finally tackle that bedroom renovation project she'd been hinting at for months. What better way to show his love than surprising her with a freshly updated space? He headed to the hardware store, mind already racing with plans. Paint swatches, new curtains, maybe even that fancy light fixture she'd been eyeing. As he loaded supplies into the car, a tiny voice in the back of his mind whispered that something felt off about Olivia's text. He shook it off. After all, he was a 35-year-old high school history teacher, not some paranoid teenager. Back home, Ethan dove into the project with gusto. He moved furniture, taped off baseboards, and started emptying closets. That's when he found it, a plain shoebox tucked away in the far corner of Olivia's side. Curiosity got the better of him. He lifted the lid, expecting old photos or keepsakes. What he found instead made his blood run cold. Passionate love letters, signed simply A. Photos of Olivia with a man Ethan didn't recognize, looking far too intimate for comfort. 2 prepaid phones he'd never seen before. And most chilling of all, a handwritten note outlining a plan to deal with E permanently. Ethan's hands shook as he rifled through the contents. This couldn't be real. It had to be some kind of sick joke. But as he read letter after letter, examined photo after photo, the truth became undeniable. His wife was having an affair, and it seemed she might be planning something far worse. He stumbled to the bed, collapsing onto the edge. His mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. How long had this been going on? Who was this A? And what exactly did they mean by dealing with you permanently? Ethan's first instinct was to confront Olivia immediately, but a small, rational part of his brain held him back. If she truly was planning something sinister, tipping his hand could be dangerous. He needed advice. He needed support. He needed Marcus. Fumbling for his phone, Ethan dialed his best friend and fellow teacher. Marcus picked up on the third ring. "Hey man, what's up?" Ethan's voice cracked as he spoke. "Marcus, I need you. Can we meet?" The rusty nail. As soon as possible. There must have been something in his tone, because Marcus didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way. Hang tight, buddy." 30 minutes later, Ethan sat across from Marcus in a dimly lit booth at the Rusty Nail. The bar was mercifully quiet for a Saturday afternoon. Ethan's hands trembled as he pushed the shoebox across the table. "I found this while cleaning out the closet," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "You're not going to believe what's inside." Marcus raised an eyebrow but said nothing as he began examining the contents. Ethan watched his friend's expression shift from curiosity to shock to outright anger. "Jesus Christ, Ethan," Marcus breathed. I don't even know what to say." "Tell me I'm crazy," Ethan pleaded. "Tell me there's some innocent explanation for all of this." Marcus shook his head. "I wish I could, man, but this looks pretty damn incriminating." They spent the next hour poring over every scrap of evidence. The love letters were explicit, leaving no doubt about the nature of the relationship. The photos showed Olivia in various intimate settings with a tall, dark-haired man Ethan didn't recognize. "Wait a second," Ethan said, squinting at one particular image. "I know this guy. That's Dr. Adrian Blackwood. He works with Olivia at Evergreen General." Marcus whistled low. "Well, that certainly complicates things. You think this medical conference is just a cover?" Ethan nodded miserably. "Has to be. God, how could I have been so blind?" "Hey, don't beat yourself up," Marcus said, reaching across the table to grip Ethan's shoulder. "You trusted your wife. That's not a crime." "No, but what they're planning might be," Ethan replied, gesturing to the ominous note. "What the hell am I supposed to do now?" Marcus thought for a moment. "We need more information. Concrete evidence. Have you considered hiring a private investigator?" Ethan blinked. The thought hadn't even occurred to him. "You really think that's necessary?" "Look, man, I hate to say it, but if half of what's in this box is true, you need to protect yourself, both legally and, well, physically." The gravity of the situation hit Ethan anew. His wife, the woman he'd loved and trusted for years, might actually be planning to harm him. The room seemed to spin. "This can't be happening," he muttered, "on top of everything else." Marcus leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Ethan sighed heavily. "I got passed over for department head last week. Again. I thought things couldn't get any worse, but this." He gestured helplessly at the damning evidence spread before them. "Shit, I'm sorry," Marcus said. "Why didn't you tell me about the job?" Ethan shrugged. "Didn't want to burden you with my problems. Fat lot of good that did me." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of Ethan's predicament hanging heavy between them. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. First, we find a good PI. Get some hard evidence of what Olivia and this Adrian guy are up to. In the meantime, you act completely normal at home. Don't give her any reason to suspect you know." Ethan nodded, grateful for his friend's clear-headed thinking. "And then what?" "Then we figure out exactly what they're planning and how to stop it," Marcus said firmly. "But one step at a time, all right? We've got your back, man." For the first time since discovering the shoebox, Ethan felt a glimmer of hope. He wasn't alone in this. With Marcus's help, maybe he could unravel this nightmare and come out the other side. As they left the bar, Ethan's resolve solidified. He would get to the bottom of Olivia's deception, and whatever she and Adrian were planning, he'd be ready. Little did Ethan know, the rabbit hole went far deeper than he could have imagined. The following Monday, Ethan found himself sitting across from Veronica Sloan, a private investigator with a reputation for discretion and results. Marcus had done some quick research and set up the meeting, insisting that time was of the essence. Veronica listened intently as Ethan laid out the situation, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. When he finished, she leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled beneath her chin. "Mr. Hawthorne, I won't sugarcoat this. What you're describing is serious. If your suspicions are correct, we're dealing with infidelity at best, and potentially much worse." Ethan swallowed hard. "How quickly can you get me proof?" "Give me a week," Veronica said. "I'll need access to your home when your wife is out, and any passwords or account information you can provide. The more I have to work with, the faster I can get results." Ethan nodded, scribbling down everything she asked for. As he handed over the information, a wave of guilt washed over him. This felt like a betrayal. But then he remembered the contents of that shoebox and steeled himself. Olivia had betrayed him first. True to her word, Veronica delivered results within days. The stack of evidence she presented made Ethan's stomach churn. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hawthorne, but your suspicions were correct," Veronica said, her voice gentle but firm. "Your wife is indeed having an affair with Dr. Adrian Blackwood, but that's not all we uncovered." Ethan braced himself. "What else?" Veronica spread out a series of financial documents. "It appears that Dr. Blackwood and your wife have been embezzling funds from the hospital's charitable foundation. We're talking significant sums of money here." Ethan's head spun. This was so much worse than he'd imagined. "How? How long has this been going on?" "Based on the records we've found, at least 6 months, possibly longer." Veronica hesitated before continuing. "There's more, Mr. Hawthorne, and I'm afraid it's not good news." She pulled out bank statements and retirement account information. Ethan's eyes widened as he saw the drastically reduced balances. "Your wife has been systematically draining your joint savings and retirement funds," Veronica explained. "The money's been funneled into offshore accounts we haven't been able to trace yet." Ethan felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Not only was Olivia cheating on him, but she was stealing from him too? How could he have been so blind? As if reading his thoughts, Veronica continued, "Mr. Hawthorne, I've seen cases like this before. It's not uncommon for the victim to blame themselves. But I want you to understand something. Your wife has been gaslighting you for months." "Gaslighting?" Ethan echoed, the term vaguely familiar. Veronica nodded. "It's a form of psychological manipulation. She's been making you doubt your own memory and judgment. Those times you felt confused or thought you were losing track of things. It was deliberate. Memories flooded back. Olivia insisting he'd agreed to plans he didn't remember making. Important documents going missing, only to turn up in places he swore he'd already checked. The constant feeling that he was losing his grip. "Oh, God," Ethan whispered, putting his head in his hands. Veronica gave him a moment to process before speaking again. "Mr. Hawthorne, I know this is overwhelming, but right now, you need to focus on protecting yourself, both legally and financially." Ethan looked up, a newfound determination in his eyes. "You're right. What do I need to do?" "First, we need to secure any remaining assets," Veronica said. "Then, we start building a case. Every bit of evidence, every inconsistency in their stories, it all matters." As Veronica outlined their next steps, Ethan felt a strange mix of emotions. Grief for the life he thought he had. Rage at Olivia's betrayal. But beneath it all, a spark of something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. He would expose the truth. He would reclaim his life. And he would make damn sure Olivia and Adrian paid for what they'd done. As Ethan left Veronica's office, his mind raced with everything he'd learned. The weight of it all threatened to crush him, but he forced himself to focus. He had work to do. First stop, the bank. He needed to freeze any accounts Olivia hadn't already drained and set up new ones in his name only. As he drove, he rehearsed what he'd say. A half-truth about identity theft concerns should do the trick without raising too many red flags. Next, he'd need to gather every important document he could find: birth certificate, social security card, car titles, anything Olivia might try to use against him. He made a mental note to rent a safety deposit box to store it all. As he pulled into the bank parking lot, his phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up. XO." Ethan's jaw clenched. How many times had he received messages like this? Never suspecting the truth. He took a deep breath, forcing his features into a neutral expression before responding. "No problem. Have a good night. Keep it simple. Act normal. Don't give anything away." As he walked into the bank, Ethan's mind drifted to the mountain of questions still unanswered. How deep did this embezzlement scheme go? Were there other victims besides the hospital and himself? And most pressingly, what exactly were Olivia and Adrian planning to do to him? The chilling phrase from that handwritten note echoed in his mind. Deal with E permanently. A cold sweat broke out on the back of his neck. He needed answers and fast. But for now, he had to focus on the task at hand, one step at a time. As he approached the teller's window, Ethan straightened his shoulders and plastered on his best concerned citizen face. Time to start taking back control of his life. Little did he know, the worst was yet to come. Ethan Hawthorne stood in the garage, his hand shaking slightly as he examined the small GPS tracker. It was barely larger than a quarter, innocuous enough to go unnoticed. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he was about to do. The past week had been a blur of covert actions and sleepless nights. After his meeting with Veronica Sloan, Ethan had thrown himself into gathering evidence. He'd ordered hidden cameras and GPS trackers, watching tutorial videos late into the night to ensure he installed them correctly. Now, as the first rays of dawn crept through the garage windows, Ethan prepared to take his surveillance to the next level. He slipped out to Olivia's car, carefully attaching the tracker beneath the rear bumper. His heart raced, half expecting Olivia to burst out of the house at any moment. But the morning remained quiet. Ethan retreated inside, heading straight for his laptop. He pulled up a fake Facebook profile he'd created under the name Alex Thompson. It was bare bones for now, just enough to pass a cursory inspection. He typed Adrian Blackwood into the search bar, his jaw clenching as the doctor's smug face appeared on the screen. Ethan spent the next hour combing through Adrian's public posts, making notes of any potentially useful information. Favorite restaurants, hobbies, mutual friends with Olivia. Anything that might help him understand their relationship better. As he worked, a notification pinged on his phone. The GPS tracker was active. A map showed Olivia's car heading towards the hospital. Ethan's stomach churned. Was she really going to work or meeting Adrian somewhere? He shook his head, forcing himself to focus. He couldn't let paranoia cloud his judgment. He needed hard evidence, not just suspicions. Over the next few days, Ethan fell into a routine. He'd wake up early, check the GPS logs, and review any overnight footage from the hidden cameras. Then he'd head to work, struggling to maintain a facade of normalcy while his mind raced with new information and theories. It was on a Wednesday afternoon that Ethan's careful observation finally paid off. He was grading papers in the living room, half listening to Olivia's phone conversation in the kitchen. She thought he was engrossed in his work, but every sense was attuned to her words. "Yes, everything's set," Olivia said in a low voice. "We'll transfer the last batch of funds next week. Then we can move forward with the plan for Ethan." Ethan's blood ran cold. He forced himself to keep writing, pen moving mechanically across the page. "Don't worry," Olivia continued. "He doesn't suspect a thing. Once we frame him for the embezzlement, it'll be easy to handle the rest." The implications of her words hit Ethan like a physical blow. They weren't just planning to steal from him. They wanted him out of the picture entirely. As soon as Olivia ended the call, Ethan excused himself to the bathroom. He splashed cold water on his face, trying to quell the panic rising in his chest. This was no longer just about infidelity or financial crimes. His life was in danger. He needed help. Legal help. With shaking hands, Ethan pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. Samantha Torres speaking. Sam, it's Ethan. Ethan Hawthorne. I need your help. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Ethan? My God, it's been ages. What's going on? I can't explain everything over the phone, Ethan said, lowering his voice. But I'm in trouble. Serious trouble. Can we meet? Something in his tone must have conveyed the urgency of the situation. Of course, Samantha replied without hesitation. My office. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Do you need the address? Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. No, I'll find it. Thank you, Sam. Really. As he ended the call, Ethan felt a glimmer of hope. Samantha had always been the sharpest legal mind in their college circle. If anyone could help him navigate this nightmare, it was her. The next day, Ethan sat across from Samantha in her sleek downtown office, pouring out the whole sordid tale. To her credit, Samantha listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly grave. When Ethan finished, Samantha leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled beneath her chin. Ethan, I won't sugarcoat this. You're in a very precarious position, but the fact that you've gathered so much evidence already is going to work in your favor. So, what do we do? Ethan asked, his voice hoarse from talking. Samantha's eyes glinted with determination. We build an ironclad case. Every scrap of evidence, every inconsistency in their stories, every financial transaction, it all goes into a dossier. We need to be ready to move at a moment's notice. For the next several hours, they pored over the evidence Ethan had collected, organizing it into a coherent narrative. Samantha's legal expertise helped identify key points that would be crucial in both criminal and civil proceedings. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the office, Samantha fixed Ethan with a serious look. There's one more thing we need to discuss, Ethan. Your safety. Ethan nodded. I've been thinking about that too. If they're willing to frame me for embezzlement, who knows what else they might try. Exactly, Samantha said. I want you to start keeping a detailed log of your movements. Anytime you leave the house, text me your destination. And if anything feels off, anything at all, you call me immediately. Got it, Ethan replied, feeling both reassured and terrified by the precautions. As he left Samantha's office, dossier tucked securely in his briefcase, Ethan felt a strange mix of emotions. Fear, certainly, anger at Olivia's betrayal, but also a growing sense of resolve. He would not be a victim. He would fight back, armed with the truth and the law. Little did he know, the battle was far from over. In fact, it was about to get much, much worse. The following weeks were a masterclass in compartmentalization for Ethan. By day, he taught his history classes, discussed homework assignments, and attended faculty meetings. But his mind was never far from the web of deceit he was untangling at home. The strain began to show. Dark circles appeared under his eyes. His normally pristine lesson plans became disorganized, and more than once he found himself staring blankly at his students, lost in thought about his next move against Olivia and Adrian. It was Darrell Washington who finally confronted him about it. The two had been friends since Ethan started at the school, sharing a love for obscure historical trivia and terrible dad jokes. All right, spill it, Darrell said one afternoon, cornering Ethan in the empty teacher's lounge. What's going on with you, man? You look like you haven't slept in weeks. Ethan opened his mouth to deflect, but the concern in Darrell's eyes broke through his defenses. Before he knew it, the whole story came pouring out. The affair, the embezzlement, the threats to his life. By the time he finished, Darrell looked as shell-shocked as Ethan felt. Jesus Christ, Darrell breathed. I had no idea. Ethan, why didn't you say something sooner? Ethan shrugged helplessly. I didn't want to drag anyone else into this mess. It's bad enough that I'm living it. Darrell shook his head firmly. That's not how friendship works, buddy. You don't have to go through this alone. He paused, considering. Look, I can't fix this for you, but I can help cover for you here at school. If you need to duck out for a meeting with your lawyer or whatever, just say the word. I've got your back." For the first time in weeks, Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "Thanks, Daryl. That means a lot." With Daryl's support at work, Ethan was able to focus more energy on building his case. He spent hours each night combing through financial records, cross-referencing dates and transactions. The scope of Olivia and Adrian's embezzlement scheme was staggering. It wasn't just the hospital's charitable foundation they'd been stealing from. The fraud extended to several affiliated clinics and even patient accounts. One night, as Olivia slept soundly upstairs, Ethan made a breakthrough. He'd managed to access her laptop while she was in the shower, quickly copying files onto a hidden flash drive. Now, poring over the documents, he uncovered the full extent of their plan. They'd been siphoning money from multiple sources, laundering it through a series of shell companies before funneling it into offshore accounts. The amounts were astronomical. Millions of dollars that should have gone to patient care and medical research, now lining the pockets of two greedy conspirators. Ethan's hands shook as he compiled his findings. This wasn't just about him anymore. There were dozens, maybe hundreds of victims. Patients who'd been overcharged, employees whose pensions had been raided, charities deprived of crucial funding. He knew he had to do something, but going to the police now might tip off Olivia and Adrian before he had all the evidence he needed to ensure their conviction. No! He needed a subtler approach. After agonizing over the decision, Ethan composed an anonymous email to the hospital's compliance officer. He outlined his suspicions about financial irregularities in the charitable foundation, providing just enough detail to spark an internal investigation without revealing the full scope of what he knew. As he hit send, Ethan felt a mix of relief and trepidation. The wheels were in motion now. There was no going back. The next morning, Ethan woke to the sound of Olivia's phone ringing. He feigned sleep as she answered, his ears straining to catch her side of the conversation. "What do you mean an audit?" Olivia hissed, her voice tight with barely contained panic. "Who authorized that?" Ethan's heart raced. His anonymous tip had worked faster than he'd anticipated. No, don't do anything yet," Olivia continued. "We need to be careful. I'll talk to Adrian and we'll figure out our next move." As soon as Olivia left for work, Ethan sprang into action. He knew time was running out. If Olivia and Adrian realized how much he knew, they might accelerate their plans against him. He spent the morning making copies of all his evidence, storing backups in secure locations. Then, steeling himself, he made a series of anonymous calls to some of the victims he'd identified in his investigation. He couldn't reveal everything, but he urged them to come forward to the authorities with any suspicions about financial mismanagement at the hospital. By the time evening rolled around, Ethan was exhausted but satisfied. The net was closing in on Olivia and Adrian, but he knew the most dangerous part was yet to come. As if on cue, Olivia breezed into the house, a forced cheeriness in her voice. "Honey, I'm home, and I've got a surprise for you." Ethan's guard immediately went up. "Oh, what's that?" Olivia's smile was brittle as she handed him a brochure. "I've booked us a little getaway for our anniversary next month. A lovely cabin in the mountains. Just the two of us, no distractions. What do you think?" Ethan's blood ran cold as he examined the brochure. This had to be it, the accident they'd been planning for him. His mind raced, trying to formulate a response that wouldn't give away his knowledge. "Wow, that's unexpected," he managed, forcing a smile. "It looks great, honey. Thanks for setting this up." Olivia beamed, but Ethan could see the calculation behind her eyes. "I'm so glad you like it. I thought we could use some time to reconnect, you know?" As Olivia chattered on about the amenities at the cabin, Ethan's mind whirled. He needed to find out more details about this trip without arousing suspicion, and he needed a failsafe in case things went wrong. Later that night, as Olivia slept, Ethan composed a timed email to Samantha. In it, he detailed everything he knew about Olivia and Adrian's crimes, including his suspicions about their plans for him on the upcoming trip. He set it to send automatically if he didn't check in within 24 hours of their scheduled return date. It felt morbid, writing what amounted to a dead man's switch. But Ethan knew he had to be prepared for every eventuality. He wouldn't let Olivia and Adrian get away with their crimes, even if the worst should happen to him. As he closed his laptop, a steely resolve settled over Ethan. He'd been reactive for too long, always one step behind Olivia and Adrian's machinations. It was time to take control of the situation. Tomorrow, he decided, he would start subtly manipulating Olivia into revealing more about their upcoming getaway. He'd use every scrap of information to bolster his counterplan, and when the time came, he'd be ready. The night before their anniversary trip, Ethan sat in the darkened living room, a tumbler of whiskey untouched on the coffee table before him. The house was quiet, save for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the occasional creak of settling wood. Upstairs, Olivia slept peacefully, unaware that her carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down around her. Ethan's fingers drummed a restless rhythm on the arm of his chair as he waited. He'd made sure Olivia's wine at dinner was a little stronger than usual, ensuring she'd turn in early. Now, with the clock ticking closer to midnight, he steeled himself for what was to come. His phone buzzed softly. A text from Samantha. Everything's in place. You're sure about this? Ethan's jaw clenched as he typed his response. No choice. It has to be tonight. He pocketed the phone and stood, moving silently through the house he'd once considered a sanctuary. Now it felt like a tomb, filled with the ghosts of broken promises and shattered trust. In the master bedroom, Olivia stirred as Ethan flicked on the lights. She blinked groggily, confusion giving way to alarm as she registered the hard set of his features. Ethan? What's going on? She mumbled, sitting up. We need to talk, Olivia, Ethan said, his voice cold and steady. About your affair with Adrian, about the money you've been stealing, about your plans to kill me. Olivia's eyes widened, a flicker of panic quickly masked by indignation. What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? Ethan almost laughed at the irony. How many times had she used that exact phrase to make him doubt himself? But not this time. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a stack of photos, tossing them onto the bed. Recognize these? He asked as Olivia's face drained of color. Or how about this? He played a recording on his phone, Olivia's own voice discussing embezzled funds with Adrian. That's not what it sounds like, Olivia stammered, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape route. Save it, Ethan snapped. I know everything, Olivia. Every lie, every stolen dollar, every plan you and Adrian cooked up, including your little scheme for our anniversary trip. Olivia's composure cracked. Tears welled in her eyes as she launched into a frantic denial. Ethan, please, you don't understand. It's not what you think. Adrian and we were just what? Ethan interrupted, his voice rising. Just stealing millions from sick people? Just planning to frame me for your crimes? Just plotting to murder me? The weight of evidence was overwhelming. As Ethan laid out detail after damning detail, Olivia's denials grew weaker. Finally, faced with irrefutable proof of her misdeeds, she crumbled. I'm sorry, she sobbed, burying her face in her hands. I'm so sorry, Ethan. I never meant for it to go this far. Adrian, he said it would be easy, that no one would get hurt. Ethan felt a twinge of pity, quickly swallowed by a wave of disgust. No one would get hurt? What about the patients whose care suffered because of your greed? What about our marriage? What about me, Olivia? You were going to kill me. Olivia's head snapped up, a calculating gleam replacing the tears in her eyes. Kill you? Don't be ridiculous. I love you, Ethan. This is all just a big misunderstanding. We can work through this, can't we? For better or worse, remember? Ethan watched as Olivia cycled through tactics. Pleading for forgiveness gave way to threats of ruining his reputation. When that failed to sway him, she tried to shift blame, painting herself as Adrian's unwitting victim. But Ethan stood firm, unmoved by her manipulations. "It's over, Olivia. I've already given copies of everything to the police and the hospital board. They're expecting my statement first thing in the morning." Olivia's face contorted with rage. "You bastard! Do you have any idea what you've done? I'll destroy you for this. I swear to God." "No, you won't," Ethan said calmly, holding up his phone. "Because I've been recording this entire conversation. One more piece of evidence to add to the pile." All fight drained from Olivia then. She slumped back against the headboard, defeated. "What happens now?" she asked in a small voice. "Now I'm leaving," Ethan replied. "I'm filing for divorce, and I'll be testifying against you and Adrian in court. What happens to you after that is up to the justice system." He turned to go, pausing at the doorway to look back at the woman he'd once loved more than life itself. She seemed small and pathetic now, a far cry from the confident, caring partner he'd thought he married. "Goodbye, Olivia," he said softly. Then he walked out, leaving her alone with the ruins of her carefully constructed web of lies. As Ethan's car pulled away from the house, he felt a curious mix of emotions. Relief, certainly. Anger still simmered beneath the surface. But mostly he felt lighter, as if he'd set down a burden he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. He checked his phone, seeing a flurry of messages from Samantha. "It's done," he texted back. "Meeting the board at 9 a.m. See you there." The next morning dawned bright and clear, at odds with the storm of emotions roiling inside Ethan. He straightened his tie, took a deep breath, and pushed open the doors to the hospital's main conference room. Inside, a grim-faced group awaited him. The hospital board sat at one end of the long table, their expressions a mix of shock, anger, and disbelief. At the other end, a pair of stone-faced detectives conferred in low voices. Samantha rose to greet him, squeezing his arm in silent support. "Ready?" she murmured. Ethan nodded, setting his briefcase on the table. "As I'll ever be." For the next 3 hours, Ethan laid out his case. He presented financial records, surveillance footage, recorded conversations, a mountain of evidence that left no doubt about Olivia and Adrian's guilt. The board members' expressions shifted from skepticism to horror as the full scope of the embezzlement scheme became clear. Millions of dollars, siphoned away from patient care, research funding, and employee pensions. "My God," breathed Dr. Eleanor Patel, the board's chairwoman. "How did we miss this?" "They were clever," Ethan explained. "Used a network of shell companies, falsified records. But once you know what to look for," he spread his hands, indicating the damning evidence before them. As the meeting wound down, Dr. Patel stood, her face etched with determination. "Mr. Hawthorne, on behalf of the board, I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention. Rest assured, we will be taking immediate action. Dr. Blackwood and Mrs. Hawthorne are suspended, effective immediately, pending a full investigation." The detectives approached next, peppering Ethan with questions about his evidence and methods. He answered as best he could, acutely aware of the fine line he'd walked in gathering some of his proof. Finally, as the room began to clear, Samantha pulled Ethan aside. "You did good in there," she said softly. "But this is just the beginning. Are you ready for what comes next?" Ethan exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the past few months pressing down on him. "I have to be," he replied. "For all the people they hurt. For myself." Samantha nodded, a spark of admiration in her eyes. "Well, you won't be doing it alone. I've been thinking we should set up some kind of support system for the other victims. Legal aid, counseling, that sort of thing. What do you say?" A small smile tugged at Ethan's lips. "I say let's get to work." The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Ethan and Samantha threw themselves into organizing support for the victims of Olivia and Adrian's fraud. They set up a hotline, arranged pro bono legal consultations, and coordinated with therapists willing to offer discounted services. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. As news of the scandal broke, Ethan found himself besieged by reporters hungry for details. Worse were the calls and messages from Olivia's family and friends, alternating between pleas for him to drop the charges and vicious attacks on his character. "You never deserved her anyway," Olivia's sister snarled in one particularly nasty voicemail. "She was too good for you. You'll regret this. You backstabbing piece of shit." Ethan deleted the message with a weary sigh. He'd expected backlash, but the relentless nature of it was wearing him down. "You okay?" Samantha asked, noticing his furrowed brow as they pored over case files one evening. Ethan managed a wan smile. "Just tired. Sometimes I wonder if it's all worth it, you know?" Samantha's eyes flashed with determination. "It is. Think of all the people you're helping, the lives you're putting back together. That's worth everything." Her words bolstered Ethan's resolve. He threw himself back into their work with renewed vigor, focusing on the good they were doing rather than the negativity swirling around him. Slowly but surely, progress was made. The support group grew, with victims finding solace and strength in shared experiences. The legal team, spearheaded by Samantha, began building a rock-solid case against Olivia and Adrian. And through it all, Ethan found himself growing. The betrayal and pain were still there, a dull ache in his chest. But alongside it bloomed something new, a sense of purpose, of righteous anger channeled into positive action. He began to rediscover parts of himself he'd thought long lost. The passionate teacher, temporarily buried under the weight of suspicion and fear, reemerged. His students noticed a change, responding with increased engagement and enthusiasm. One afternoon, as Ethan wrapped up a particularly lively discussion on the civil rights movement, he caught Daryl grinning at him from the doorway. "What?" Ethan asked as the last student filed out. Daryl shook his head, still smiling. "Nothing, man. It's just good to see the old Ethan back, you know?" Ethan felt a warmth spread through his chest. "Yeah," he replied softly. "It's good to be back." As the months wore on and the case against Olivia and Adrian built, Ethan found himself settling into a new normal. The pain of betrayal gradually dulled, replaced by a steely determination to see justice done. Finally, 6 months after that fateful night of confrontation, the trial began. Ethan sat ramrod straight in the witness box, his voice steady as he recounted the sordid details of Olivia and Adrian's crimes. He could feel their eyes boring into him from the defense table, but he refused to look their way. Instead, he focused on the jury, on the victims filling the gallery behind them. With each piece of evidence presented, each damning fact laid bare, Ethan saw a weight lift from their shoulders. This was why he'd fought so hard. This was what made it all worthwhile. As he stepped down from the stand, Ethan caught Samantha's eye. She gave him a small nod, a gesture packed with pride and solidarity. In that moment, Ethan realized something had shifted between them. The long hours working side by side, the shared mission of justice. It had forged a connection deeper than mere friendship. The trial stretched on for weeks, a painstaking unraveling of Olivia and Adrian's web of deceit. But in the end, justice prevailed. The jury returned a guilty verdict on all counts, and the judge's sentence was appropriately severe. As Olivia was led away in handcuffs, she locked eyes with Ethan one last time. Ethan felt a chapter of his life closing, but rather than sadness, he felt only relief and a burgeoning sense of possibility. In the weeks that followed, life took on a brighter hue. The school board, impressed by Ethan's integrity and perseverance throughout the ordeal, offered him the long-coveted position of department head. He accepted with a mixture of pride and humility, vowing to use the role to inspire his students as he'd been inspired by the pursuit of justice. But Ethan's ambitions didn't stop there. Using a portion of the recovered funds awarded to him in the civil suit, he established a foundation dedicated to supporting victims of financial fraud and domestic deception. The work was challenging but deeply rewarding, a way to transform his pain into something positive. And through it all, Samantha remained by his side. What had begun as a professional relationship slowly blossomed into something more. They took things slow, both wary of rushing into anything after the turmoil of the past year. But there was no denying the spark between them, the deep understanding forged in the crucible of shared struggle. One evening, as they walked hand in hand to the park near Ethan's new apartment, Samantha turned to him with a soft smile. "You know, when you called me that day, I never imagined we'd end up here," she said. Ethan chuckled, squeezing her hand. "Believe me, neither did I, but I'm glad we did." They paused, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. "What are you thinking?" Samantha asked, noticing the pensive look on Ethan's face. He was quiet for a moment, considering. "I'm thinking about how far I've come," he said finally. "A year ago, I was lost, drowning in lies and betrayal. Now," he gestured expansively, encompassing the park, the foundation, Samantha herself. "Now I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Samantha leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "You're stronger than you know, Ethan Hawthorne. You took something terrible and turned it into a force for good. I'm proud of you, and I'm excited to see what you do next." Ethan wrapped his arm around her, feeling a surge of warmth and hope. The road ahead wasn't clear, but for the first time in a long time, he was eager to see where it might lead. As they turned to head home, Ethan reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point. The pain, the struggle, the moments of despair, they had all shaped him, forged him into someone stronger and wiser than he'd been before. He'd lost much, it was true, but he'd gained so much more. Purpose, self-respect, and a chance at true happiness. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Ethan knew he was ready to face them not alone, but with allies by his side and a newfound strength in his heart. The sun dipped below the horizon, and Ethan Hawthorne stepped forward into his future, ready to write the next chapter of his life. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.
I caught my wife lying about her girls' night out. Saw messages with her affair partner saying, "I had so much fun," and found out more worse things even I uncomfortable to read as her husband. Me 30 male, with my wife 27 female of 7 years. I want you to tell me not to read too much into this. My wife and I have had a good marriage of 7 years. There have been no serious issues over the time. We have been together. We have a 6-year-old son as well. My story begins one night when my wife goes out with her friends for a local winter celebration that happens every year. It is very normal for us to socialize separately, and I was home with the kid. She came home at about 5 a.m., about a half hour before I had to leave for work. And this has been our agreement for a while. Generally, she stays out with her best friend Emma and then sleeps or just sobers up as much as possible at Emma's apartment before coming home. This has always been an option, and she has exercised it a few times a year for the last few years. Our house is quite a drive from where they or I would go out for the night. All this was normal. I got up. I went to work and I came home. I asked her about her night, and she told me all about it, all the people she saw and hung out with, her timeline, etc. Great. I'm glad you got home safe. I'm glad she had fun. We had previously been on vacation on a Southeast Asian resort, and I had brought our little used tablet along on it. I had brought it to read on in lieu of an e-reader since I could also play a couple games on it. The night after she came home from going out, I opened it to continue a game. I had begun to play on it. I opened the web browser first to check ESPN, and it went directly to her Facebook messages page. When she had logged in to check on a friend who was at house sitting for us. We had had a limited internet package at the resort. This is where things took a weird turn. I could see she had messaged a new guy at work named Dale that she had mentioned a couple of times the message. I had so much fun. I looked at it and couldn't help but to tap it here. I discovered an alternate version of her night. There was nothing in the message immediately alarming in terms of assuming something specific happened. But why were they uncomfortable to read as her husband? My issues in this moment are twofold. One, I can't say she lied to me, but she misrepresented her night from their conversation. She quickly lost her long-term work friends except for Emma, and had spent the night at a second bar with Dale and a couple of Dale's friends. She did mention running into Dale to me, but he was a footnote from the messaging conversation. I can tell she basically spent the whole night with him, and without the people she had highlighted. For to her tone, every sentence had 3 exclamation points. She told him she had so much fun multiple times. She pushed the conversation when it stalled. He did begin it with a message at 2 a.m. after they separated about a girl that gave my wife a hard time about them hanging out. But when she woke up at 9 to when I got home at 4 the next day, she pushed the entire conversation consistently. None of this is damning, but I got my attention and stayed in the back of my head for a couple of days. I kind of wish I left it there, but I didn't. 2 nights later, I did something I'd never even felt compelled to do after she fell asleep. I grabbed her phone. I knew there wouldn't be anything with him since they were using Facebook, but I was curious about her text with Emma. I was nervous and didn't feel like I had a lot of time, so I jumped into her conversation with Emma the day after. At first there was nothing about Dale, but about how a different guy I had never heard of had treated Emma. But then out of nowhere, I'm gonna ask my wife the following. Do you think it will be awkward for you with Dale at work tomorrow? He is so touchy. Hello. Well, my wife answered. I don't think it will be awkward, but he did message me in the middle of the night to apologize about that girl. They went back to talking about the guy giving Emma is married to someone else, by the way. No idea who this guy is. Before my wife texted Emma a picture of them and Dale with my wife in the middle. Face pressed against both of them and my wife teasing Emma about looking like a different girl in the picture, a girl that had apparently slept with Dale, a fact that they had mocked Dale with. Then my wife said, and I quote, "I can't believe we got 2 guys to kiss." That was all of their conversation about him, but it was enough. Why would work with Dale be awkward? Why did my wife mention the message about the girl, but not about the fact that she had continued to happily and excitedly push the conversation after that? What could have happened? Touchy? Like he got upset about something, or he was physically all over her. Did she push him away when he got too touchy, and that is why it is awkward? Then why push the conversation with him so hard the next day? Whatever did happen from how excitedly she was talking to him, she wasn't opposed to it. What then? I sat on this for a couple more days, alternating between trusting her and being uncomfortable. I decided I needed to know more, and I grabbed her phone after she was out cold a few nights later to try to read more. First, I saw there was nothing more between her and Emma about him so good. I scrolled up to about a month back in their combo and just started reading to make myself feel better, and it worked. Nothing bad about me, and only 2 mentions of him. 1 when my wife hired him, and 2 that he had said at work that he felt that my wife and Emma were going out too early that night. Emma's follow-up was that, LOL, people go out even earlier than we do, so it didn't seem like anything more than a comment about something someone at work said. Then I got back to the stuff I had read originally about their night out, and I decided to read it again. It made me feel the same, but when I got to the end, I realized the last line about teasing Dale about the girl he had slept with was gone. Of all of it, why delete that? On accident is all I could figure on accident when deleting other texts. Earlier that day I mentioned to my wife that a friend had seen her at a second bar. She had largely admitted from her story to me to gauge the reaction. She seemed alarmed, but I pretended I couldn't remember who saw her because no one did, and she dropped it very quickly. It occurred to me then that maybe the missing text I had read previously had been deleted in a purge of texts about my saying that. I got on my mobile account to see what sort of log there was of texting, and I was shocked at what I had found. First, I realized I could see all of her messages app online just like that. Creepy I could do this because her number was our primary account holder, and the number either of us would use to pay the bill, check for upgrades, or whatever. Second, I could see a text log. I could tell from referencing the text log to her messaging app that she had indeed deleted 12 texts to and from Emma in the time I was worried about. I couldn't find any other texts that were deleted after an hour or so of cross-referencing. At this point, I felt like I was going insane, but I figured I went this far, so I might as well see it through. I logged back into her Facebook that buried day. She had sent him a picture of her that she claimed was when she looked better at a much lighter weight. He said she looked better now and sent her a similar weight loss picture. They had chatted back and forth about that until I had come home. This was yesterday, and this has been about a week. I am very torn on all of this because I still feel like I can trust her. But I also now fell down a bit of a rabbit hole, and I also know this is largely of my own decision-making. I should have never looked at any of this, but I did, and here I am. I'm also afraid to confront her. I'm both afraid to have been way off base and destroy a good marriage, but I'm also afraid to lure her to my suspicion. If I did that, she could either end it without me ever knowing I was cheated on, or continue to pursue it aware that I'm watching. I don't want her to have the upper hand if that is the case. But mostly I want you to tell me I am being stupid so I will stop. We have the same friends, so I can't really go to them. Reddit talks him sense into me. Thanks. Deleting certain messages, but not all looks incredibly guilty of what is the question. Something is going on. It could be as benign as her being more flirty than she would have been. Or maybe she's starting something up. What I want to know is if they want to run into Dale, or they plan to meet him. Either as a group, or they knew he was going somewhere, and they went on purpose for him. Your choice is to walk around a nervous wreck or point blank ask her. Sit her down and say we need to talk about what really happened on day night. Because I know you were at that bar and Dale was there, and to be honest, I'm very upset right now. Alright, let's go to the update. It didn't last long. The next day after I posted this, my wife and Emma came home and began talking about work. She mentioned Dale staying too close after someone else had called out, and she was grateful. She didn't have to do it. I took the opportunity to ask about him. After a few light questions, I asked if he was gay since he worked in a traditionally feminine position. She said no, he isn't gay, and then she hesitated and said maybe a little bi. I asked why, and she said they got him to kiss another guy when they were out the night all this started. I asked how she managed this, and she said by kissing Emma. I asked the following: so you kiss someone else for another man's pleasure? She was really caught off guard by the question and said she didn't think of it like that it was just something funny they got them to do. I asked how would you feel if I did the same thing, and yeah, she said she saw my point. She pretty quickly conceded that it was not a good thing to do and asked if I was mad. I was already annoyed with her because she had leaked a work detail. I had told her accidentally to the wife of a co-worker of mine that day and had got me in some minor hot water. So I just told her it wasn't the end of the world, but I wanted a little space right at the moment. She went into the bedroom and I got to watch something interesting happen. She simultaneously started messaging Dale and Emma, which I was able to watch on my computer. To Emma, she was saying all the right things. He is right. That was stupid. I'd be pissed. We didn't think it through. I feel terrible, etc. She was having a pretty epic breakdown in those texts, and only one thing annoyed me. At one point, Emma said she was glad no one took a picture or video, and my wife said something like, "Oh, don't even say that," and then my wife immediately deleted those texts, which was a both frustrating reminder that she was deleting texts and a confusing moment because I have no idea why she delete those two at all. I checked the logs later to confirm she had deleted them, and it wasn't a sync issue between apps. Dale's conversation was entirely work-related. In fact, it began with a 1-minute Facebook call from him and was her following up that he was able to get into a safe he needed to in order to close up. Then it veered into a conversation about how much he fit in, how much he preferred it to his other job, how much learning he had to do, etc. Nothing alarming, but she did end it by giving him her number so he didn't have to Facebook call her if she needed help. So to recap, I'm sitting in the other room really annoyed with her for kissing another girl for him. She is panicking to Emma about it in one message, and in another, she's giving him her number at the exact same time. Dang it. But this is what proved so frustrating about all of this. She wasn't wrong to give him her number so he didn't have to Facebook call her for work help. But could you have any worse timing? So I did what any mature adult would do. I ignored her except for when I had to interact for 2 days. On the third day of largely being ignored, she went from sad to angry. So I asked her why she was mad. She said she knew I had been reading her texts. I told her she had been acting really sketchy, and she pointed out that I got really upset the one time she did this. A seriously insane but unrelated incident, and I again just said she had been acting sketchy. She asked why, so I laid everything out about her texts and what was bothering me. She told me I was overreading it. Yes. She had met Dale out and done the inappropriate kiss, but he was too drunk, started being too touchy, so they left. I then asked why she spent the bulk of the next day messaging him about how much fun she had and other inane things. Sent him a weight loss picture, a picture of her dinner, her phone number, and generally pushed the conversations with him. She froze for a second and said she didn't know, and then said she messaged him so it wouldn't be awkward at work because of how she left so abruptly with Emma. She said they had just been talking about exercise at work. So she sent him a picture of what she wanted to get back to. She's not big, by the way. She's pretty hot actually, and then her dinner because it was just a continuation of the conversation. And she also said she just gave him her number because of work. She also conceded very quickly that from my perspective it all looked bad, and that if the positions were reversed she would be thinking the same exact thing of me. But she also stressed that I didn't see them at work, how she is always talking about me and our son, that she isn't attracted to him. She asked me repeatedly what she could do. But really I don't know. I just wished I got to watch it play out longer, but she out-snooped me and figured out I had needed a code to get into her messages. But I told her it was to look at Verizon's new unlimited plans when I had asked her for it. This tipped her off, and eventually she looked at my computer and found I was watching her messages. Now this is a little alarming to me too, actually, because I had never done as much as snoop prior to this. Why wouldn't she have taken my request for the code for what I was saying I was doing? Why was her guard up? She says she was suspicious I had looked in her phone when she was in the shower. So her guard was up from that. I can't remember if I did or what she was referring to, but I feel like that probably happened. She also explained away the text deletions by saying they were all talking to Emma about how she thought maybe I was looking at her texts. I don't know, this isn't strictly true because I saw her delete the weird glad no one took a pic texts. But it is plausible enough. She kept asking me what she could do and eventually deleted her messenger. But I told her that was pointless since she'd find a way and had given him her number anyway. She told me to talk to him to talk to Emma, but I said talking to him was just weird because I didn't believe he did anything wrong. And it would make her life weird, and that Emma would just tell me whatever my wife wanted her to tell anyway. So she kept stressing that she didn't do anything I didn't know about that. Yes, it looked bad that she would do anything to fix it, and that there was nothing there. She told me to keep watching her stuff, that it was fine. She understood, etc. It left me in a weird spot. I feel like I have a fair amount of evidence that something was starting, and I do believe in my gut. She likes him. I even told her that if I was him and having a girl message me like that, I would think she was a sure thing. But yet all her explanations are plausible, and I am completely certain nothing happened based on timelines. I was able to clearly establish. I do feel she violated our trust, but I also know nothing more will come of it now. Unless it does, in which case she would just find new ways to hide it. For her part, she is able to explain about everything pretty logically, completely admit it looks wrong, but largely call it all a coincidence. After a couple more days of anger, I relented and said I would drop it. I have but figured I'd leave this update. It isn't enough to end a good marriage, but it does feel weirdly unresolved to not get to know. Did I get caught catching her, or is the sum less than its parts in this case? Top commenter says, from what I'm reading, your conversation with your wife seems to be about each other, pointing fingers at each other. Totally called for and totally justifiable. However, this kind of conversation will get you guys nowhere and will never resolve the elephant in the room. Broken trusts. In order for you guys to be better at your relationship trust-wise, I suggest you start talking about your feelings and not about excuses. Sit down with her and tell her how you feel about everything. And then to bring it closer to home, just ask her, how would you feel if I did exactly the same thing as you did? From there, you just shut up and listen to her whole story. Rebuilding trust is something both of you have to do together. Work out a plan together. Think about what feelings are lacking from both sides. Good luck to you. Hope things work out. All right, let's go to the second cheating story. My husband, 31 male, of 12 years, cheated on me, 30 female for years. My husband and I have been together since we were 14 years old, and we know each other since my birth. We practically did everything together, and we're always there for each other all the time. There isn't a single issue that we haven't overcome together. Yesterday, he confessed he was cheating on me with another woman. It was after we finished making love. He told me that they had been together for a long time and have kids together. Less than me and him, but still kids. He told me that he loves me and understands that if I wanted a divorce because he betrayed my trust before he could say anything else. I told him to get out. I yelled and screamed at him to get out, but stopped when our baby in the same room as us started crying. I told him he needed to leave for the night and not come back until I said so. He left. I don't know where he is, but I received lots of texts of him wanted to talk this over and see if we can find a solution together. I'm so angry, confused right now. All I want is my husband back, my best friend. But I also feel betrayed all the trust we worked up over the years gone. I have 4 kids with this man. What do I do? Let's see the top comments. One of the foul realities of the legal system in many countries, including the US, is that the person that goes for child support and maintenance first gets a bigger piece of the pie. He has also most likely been using marital assets to support these people. Because of this, you need to get a family law attorney today. Use a credit card if you must. Don't wait on any of these things because you must protect your assets for your children. Take half the money in joint accounts and put them in an individual account at another bank. Take his name off of joint credit cards or close them down. Freeze your credit. Don't tell him you're doing these things from now on. His attorney talks to your attorney. Only communicate with him via text or email about the children. Screenshot every communication. Tell everyone after you've done the above, your family, his family, friends, everyone. You need the emotional support of sympathetic people, and there is nothing you should be ashamed of. Consider going to websites with forums such as Jump Lady or survivinginfidelity.com. They have a host of information and emotional support.
Two attractive women were dining on the restaurant's terrace, catching the eyes of passing men, but they were engrossed in conversation and paid them no mind. "How long has it been?" Melanie inquired of her tall, dark-haired companion. "Feels like ages since I last saw you." The other woman, a blonde, a couple of years younger, replied, "I know, Mel. I've been swamped with grad school and family stuff. Hardly had time for anything else." "How's business school treating you? You must be close to snagging that MBA." "Yeah, almost there. Spring break's next week, then just a few more weeks till graduation. Thesis is turned in, so no worries there. Plus, looks like I'm skipping all exams." "Smooth sailing ahead then." "Fantastic, Mel. Thanks. Got a job lined up yet?" "Nah, thinking of taking a breather after the craziness of the last 2 years. Want to unwind a bit before diving into the workforce. But enough about me. How about you? Any special man in your life?" "Doing okay. Still on the hunt for Mr. Right." The blonde gave her brunette friend an assessing look. "With your looks, you could have a date every night if you wanted." Melanie smirked. "Trust me, living the single life isn't all it's cracked up to be nowadays. Wading through a sea of idiots just to find one decent guy gets old fast. I envy you, though. Happily married to a great guy like Adam. Speaking of whom, how's your dashing husband doing?" "He's all right, I suppose. Wait, did I just hear a hint of discontent? What's up, Mel? Things not all rosy in your world?" The blonde shook her head. "Not exactly trouble, just Adam's been swamped with work lately. Hardly any time for us, and when we do, our entertainment budget's tighter than ever. Well, he dedicates all his time to building his company for both of you, and grad school, well, it's probably not cheap." "I get it, and I'm grateful, but sometimes I just miss the carefree fun of school. Everyone talks about parties and bar meetups, and here I am, stuck at home watching TV reruns." Her dark-haired friend gave her a knowing look. Any specific person at school you're itching to party with?" Melanie chuckled. "You always see right through me." Leaning in to avoid being overheard, she confessed, "Actually, there's this freshman, Carl. He's really sweet." She blushed. "And he's definitely into me. Whenever we're together, he always compliments how good I look and how well I'm doing in school." Gary shook her head. "I don't think Adam would be thrilled about this." "It's just innocent flirting, nothing serious. But you're right. Adam wouldn't approve. That's why I won't tell him." She shifted uncomfortably. "But I can't help but miss the freedom of my single days. It was so exciting, meeting different guys. I miss it. Be careful, okay? You got a great husband. Don't risk losing him. Adam won't take kindly to any fooling around. And if he ever found out, plenty of women would be lining up to console him." I know. I want to spend my life with him, start a family. I just wanted a bit of fun before things got too serious." Lowering her voice, she leaned closer again. "Speaking of Carl, he asked me to go to Florida with him for spring break. If I could guarantee Adam wouldn't find out, I'd consider it." She laughed it off. "But it's just a fantasy. It could never happen." Jerry sat down, contemplating Melanie for a moment. Finally, she nodded, as if she had a plan. "Don't be so sure. I've got an idea how you could pull it off." Melanie sighed, a mix of disbelief and excitement. "Are you serious? You'd risk your marriage for a fling? If I could be certain Adam wouldn't know, maybe. But you're just teasing me, Gary. There's no way I could get away with it." "Yes, and it's actually pretty straightforward." Jerry began to outline each step with her fingers. First, you make a new Gmail account under a fake name like Good Friend. Then, you use it to send Adam an anonymous message, warning him about his wife's supposed affair. Wait, do I admit to having an affair? This sounds insane. Why would you do that? Jerry kept her tone even. More like you'd suggest Melanie's cheating with someone Adam doesn't know and can't easily check. And what's the point? It'll just make Adam suspicious of me. Exactly. But when he can't find the mystery guy, he'll have to confront you, demanding answers. But I don't want him to doubt me. No, you don't. So when he confronts you, you act furious, accusing him of mistrust. You'll be so upset that you'll want to break from the marriage. Doesn't your mom live in Florida? Melanie was caught off guard by the sudden turn. Yes. Why? Oh, I see. You tell Adam angrily that you're going to Florida to sort things out with your mom. Then while he's here, frantically searching for the phantom lover, you're in Florida with Carl, having your own little fling. How do I explain this to my mom? Jerry rolled her eyes. You don't. In fact, you don't even see her while you're there. But what if Adam calls her? Tell him not to. Make it clear you need space to sort things out. Warn him not to contact you or your mom while you're away. Tell him if he does, you might not come back. Melanie pondered her friend's plan for a moment, then her face lit up. You know, Gary, I can see this working. But what about when I come back? It's easy. By then, Adam will miss you like crazy. And since he can't find the mystery man, he'll realize it's all a hoax. He'll feel guilty and beg for forgiveness. You'll forgive him, and things will be back to normal. You'll have some fun, and you and Adam will be closer than ever. What about the supposed guy I'm supposed to be seeing? Maybe I should just make up a name for him. You could, but it'll be more believable if he's real. Pick someone totally off limits, like an old guy or someone far away or even deceased. That way, if Adam tries to find him, you're in the clear. Hey, I think I've got it. There was this creepy professor back in my first year of grad school. He must have vanished because I never saw him again. How does that sound? Perfect. Melanie reached across the table, squeezing her friend's hand. You're amazing, Jerry. I'm so pumped. I really think this is going to work. She hugged herself, trembling with anticipation. I can't wait to tell Carl. Adam returned to his office, sinking into his worn swivel chair. He rubbed his forehead, anxiety clouding his thoughts. If those parts don't arrive soon, we'll miss the prototype deadline. After the foreman left, Adam pondered a backup plan. His email chimed, and he eagerly checked his inbox, hoping for good news. But the subject line regarding his wife nearly made him delete the message. Curiosity won, and he opened it. I'm sorry to say, but Melanie's involved with Professor Bellingham. Thought you should know, friend. What in the world? Stunned, Adam read the message again, struggling to believe it. This can't be right. Melanie wouldn't do this. Someone's trying to stir up trouble. But who and why? He almost deleted it, but paused. I can't ignore this. It's probably a mistake, but I have to know. Angrily, he hit reply. Who are you? Why make such an accusation? What evidence do you have? He fired off the message, staring at the screen in frustration. This won't get me anywhere. No way to trace this person or when they'll reply. I need to find out about this Bellingham. He scoured the university's site, but found no mention of the professor. Frustrated, he widened his search to other schools nearby, but came up empty-handed. This is maddening, he muttered, feeling powerless. Did my buddy just invent a name? He Googled it, but the results included 2 females, none local. I knew it was fake. Someone's pulling a prank or trying to drive me nuts. Yet I couldn't bring myself to delete the letter. Now that it's sent, doubt gnawed at him. What if she's cheating? I didn't see any signs, but that doesn't mean much. I've been swamped at work, barely spending time with her. Maybe she's upset because I've been neglecting her. I remember turning down her fun ideas sometimes. But dang, I'm putting in nearly 70 hours a week for the business. Doesn't she get it? Can't she see it's for us? And we can't afford extravagance. Her tuition's skyrocketing, and I'm pouring money into the business. Yet maybe I neglected her. Feeling guilty, he checked his calendar, finding no recent meetups. Damn. But guilt turned to anger. I may not have given Melanie all she wanted, but that doesn't justify cheating. We discussed sacrifices for the business. She agreed then, so she can't complain now. His thoughts were interrupted by the foreman's arrival. Hey, Adam, great news. The parts we needed just arrived. Thank goodness. All right, we need to unpack them and get them to the workshop ASAP. After the foreman left, Adam took a deep breath. Well, at least one crisis is avoided. He smirked. Guess I can devote more time to my wife. After more futile internet searching, He leaned back, contemplating. If Mel's really having an affair, it must be someone from the university. Maybe my buddy got the name wrong. Or perhaps the university didn't list him. He found the HR phone number. When the secretary answered, he inquired about Professor Bellingham. Which department? I think it's the business school, but not sure. After a pause, she apologized. No Bellingham in the business school, other departments? Another sigh. Please hold. This time the wait was longer. When she returned, her tone was curt. No Professor Bellingham here? A thought struck him. Maybe he left a year or two ago. I can only confirm current staff. Why? University policy, sir. Anything else? No, you tried, he said, holding back sarcasm. He tried the business school dean, but got nowhere. By now, his head throbbed. Need a drink, he muttered, hanging up. Then he called Gary. Hey, can we meet at Macy's after work? I need advice. No, can't talk about it now. Okay, see you at 6. At Macy's, Adam found Gary at a quiet table with wine and beer. He kissed him on the cheek. Thanks for the beer and, more importantly, for coming. As they sat, Gary studied him. All right, Adam, spill. Business trouble? Unsure where to start, Adam hesitated. Do you know a Professor Bellingham? Gary shook her head. Bellingham? Never heard of him. He sighed and handed her a printout of the email. I got this today, he said. She swiftly perused it, sighed, then read it again. Poor Adam, she said sympathetically. No wonder you didn't want to discuss it over the phone. What are your thoughts? I'm torn, Jerry, he replied. Can't fathom it's true, but can't ignore it either. I spent the day trying to find this elusive Bellingham at the university, but hit a dead end. Now I'm lost. Can't afford a detective, no time for sleuthing. That's why I turned to you. You've been a steadfast friend to Melanie and me. What's your take? She took another sip of wine, then gave his hand a quick squeeze. Essentially, you're asking if I think she's having an affair. I can't provide absolute certainty. On one hand, I haven't noticed anything to suggest she's unfaithful. On the other hand, I haven't seen much of her lately. His annoyance flashed, and she hastened to continue. You're aware that some people thrive on stirring trouble, or perhaps you have business rivals who seek to distract. There may be other possibilities I haven't considered. What's clear is you can't ignore it and hope it vanishes. I know how strongly you value marital fidelity, and any suggestion of a rift in your marriage will gnaw at you. If left unaddressed, doubt will corrode your relationship with Melanie as effectively as infidelity, she said. I understand your dilemma, Gary, but what's the solution? I believe you should show this to Melanie. She deserves to know she's been accused of infidelity and should have the chance to explain. After all, Adam, if someone accused you, wouldn't you want to know? He sat silently, then nodded. You're right. Keeping this from Melanie will affect our relationship. Ultimately, it could drive us apart as surely as if she had truly betrayed me, he said. He rose and embraced her. Thanks for helping me sort through this, Gary. I don't know what I'd do without you. You both mean the world to me. Adam, if there's anything I can do, just say the word. He nodded gratefully and headed for the door as she watched him go. When he arrived home, Melanie was already there, waiting for him. Where have you been, Adam? I tried to call you, but you didn't answer, she questioned. Ignoring her query, he grabbed her hand and guided her to the couch, sitting next to her. I need to show you something, Mel. Something that's really confused me, he explained. As she sat down next to him, she appeared anxious while he handed her the printout. I received this email today. Can you make sense of it? She quickly read it, then, to his shock, she stood up and began shouting. Do you think I'm cheating on you? I can't believe this. You hear one accusation from someone anonymous and suddenly I'm accused of cheating? No. No, darling, I'm not blaming you for anything. If you're not blaming me, then why did you show me this nonsense? She grabbed the printout, crumpled it, and threw it at him. You might as well stab me in the heart. This deeply wounds me. You trust someone too scared to even sign their name over me, your wife, she declared, grabbing her bag and heading toward the door. I can't even face you right now. I'm leaving, and I don't know when I'll return. With that, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Oh, damn, I didn't see this coming. Now things are even worse, he moaned, sinking back into the couch and burying his face in his hands. As he sat there, Adam's initial thoughts were defensive. Why was she so upset? She didn't even let me explain. I didn't accuse her of cheating. I just showed her what someone else claimed. That's all. But he realized the truth before he finished. If Mel had shown me that note, I probably would have lost it too. But what could I do? Pretend everything was okay? Jerry was right. I can't just dismiss the letter. It wouldn't be fair to Mel or to me. Even though he spent the rest of the night pondering the issue, he was no closer to deciding what to do than when he began. He knew he and Mel needed to talk, but he couldn't even decide what to say to her. All he knew for certain was that he wanted to bring his wife home to try to repair the relationship. Emotionally drained, Adam was determined to stay awake until Melanie returned. However, after another hour of waiting, exhaustion overtook him, and he drifted off to sleep on the sofa. Sometime past midnight, the sound of the door opening jolted him awake. As he stood up, Melanie entered the living room and fixed him with a stern look, hands on her hips. "Mel, we really need—" She cut him off sharply. "I don't want to talk about this now," she said, her tone final. "You can spend the night on the couch, and we'll discuss it in the morning." Without waiting for a response, she turned and marched down the hallway to their bedroom. Hearing the door slam shut, he groaned and settled back on the couch, hoping sleep would claim him again. It took a while. Adam usually rose early for work, but he felt compelled to wait until Melanie appeared so they could talk. Brewing coffee, he sat at his laptop, skimming the news. Nearly 8 o'clock, Melanie entered the kitchen, dragging a suitcase behind her, shocking Adam. "Where are you going, Melanie? I thought we were—" She raised her hand, cutting him off. "It's a shock, Adam. This shakes our whole marriage. I need time alone to process. Spring break starts tomorrow, and I'm going to Florida to visit my mom. I'll be gone all week, returning next Monday for classes. During my absence, I don't want to hear from you. No calls to me or my mom. Got it?" He nodded, feeling helpless. "I'm serious, Adam. If you try to reach out, I might not come back. Understood?" Another nod. "Okay," she said, and left, dragging her suitcase to her car. Stunned, Adam sat for minutes before dragging himself to shave and change, then drove to work with a heavy heart. Upon arriving, good news awaited him. His foreman efficiently distributed the missing components, and testing proceeded without issue. "At least the business won't crash today," Adam muttered bitterly to himself. "Unlike my marriage." In the afternoon, while working on a spreadsheet, he received a call from Jerry. "I was worried and wanted to know how you were doing. How did it go last night with Melanie?" "Oh, well, it's a long, sad story," he said, feeling dejected. "Oh, that doesn't sound very good. Maybe we can get together to discuss this again over a drink." "That would be great. Jerry, same place." "Okay." Before leaving, he checked his email again, but there was still nothing from Gudfreen. At the bar, Jerry saw the dark circles under Adam's eyes right away. "Adam, looks like you didn't sleep much last night. What happened?" Taking a big sip from his beer, Adam talked about the fight with Melanie and her leaving. The next day, Jerry looked at him with sadness and guilt. "Oh, Adam, I feel awful. You listened to me and it turned out all wrong." "No, Jerry, I thought about it a lot, and I believe it was the only choice. I didn't expect Mel to react so strongly, but I couldn't hide the letter and act like nothing happened. Now I hope she'll calm down and we can talk when she's back." "You say that nicely, Adam, but I still feel bad. So what's your plan for the week?" "I'm not sure, Jerry. If Mel and I don't talk, I don't see how we can move forward. Maybe I'll wait a bit and then call her." "No, Adam, that's the last thing you should do. She already feels like you don't trust her. If you call after she told you not to, it'll prove her right." "Yeah, I get it. But I feel so useless. I don't know how to find out who sent the letter." "While she's away, I'll keep trying to find this Professor Bellingham." "That sounds smart. Maybe he can help fill in some gaps." Over the next days, Adam kept trying to solve the letter mystery. Despite no luck, he was sure Bellingham had ties to the university. Then he had an idea. "Maybe I can't find him because he's an alum, not a teacher. I'm an alum too, so maybe the alumni office can help." When Adam called and said he was a former student, he got transferred to the development department quickly. The person he talked to wrote down Adam's info and asked if he wanted to give money to the school. Adam said no. He was looking for Professor Bellingham, thinking he might be a former student. The person checked, but couldn't find anyone by that name in their records. Adam suggested maybe Bellingham didn't finish school, but the person couldn't help since their records only had graduates. Adam hung up frustrated, thinking he just guaranteed he'd be asked for money later. The next day, Adam went to the business school during spring break to look for Bellingham. Even though it was break, he asked around, but eventually got asked to leave by the assistant dean. Back at his office, feeling defeated, Adam wondered what to do next. Then his phone rang. It was Dr. Avery Mayfair from the business school faculty who heard him earlier and wanted to help. Mayfair said Bellingham used to teach part-time there, but his class got canceled because not many students enrolled. Adam thanked him. "There's more," Dr. Mayfair continued. "At the start of this year, Bellingham told me he got a job at Black Hills State University in South Dakota. Really? Adam asked, surprised. Yes, the professor confirmed. And there's something else. In the same message, he said he recently married his partner, Harold. Harold? So Bellingham. Exactly, Dr. Mayfair said. Thank you for calling, Dr. Mayfair, Adam said gratefully. I still don't get why someone sent me that nasty letter, but now I know it was a lie. Can I ask why you called me? I'm grateful, but we don't know each other, the professor asked. I don't mind telling you, he continued, his tone changing. Years ago, something similar happened to me. My wife left me for someone else, so I understand how you feel. Thankfully, this time it was just a false alarm, but if it were true, I'd have told you. Thanks, sir. I really appreciate what you did. That night, Adam called Gary to share the news. I still don't know who's trying to mess up my marriage, but I'm sure now Mel isn't with Professor Bellingham. Can you trust Dr. Mayfair? Gary asked. Definitely. I checked him out after our call. He's on the business school faculty. He seems respected and older, maybe around 60. I also looked up Bellingham on the Black Hills website. He's there too. That's good news, Adam. You must feel relieved. Yeah, I do. But now I'm not sure what to tell Mel when she comes back. It's simple, Adam. From what you said about your argument with her, she didn't give you a chance to explain. When she returns, tell her you never doubted her. Say you knew about Bellingham and found him as soon as you got the letter. But because she reacted strongly, you couldn't tell her. If you handle it right, she'll apologize to you. I'm not sure, Jerry. Things weren't exactly like that, Adam said uncertainly. Gary heard a smile in his voice. Come on, Adam. Is it really so bad to bend the truth a bit to get what you want? Before leaving town on Sunday, Melanie called Gary. Hey, I just wanted to check on Adam before I come home. I'm nervous about what I'll find. You owe me big for helping you while you were wrapped up in your affair. With some luck and my help, you'll reconcile with Adam, and your marriage will be better, Gary assured her. Melanie told him about her week, ending with Adam finding Bellingham. If you handle it right, Adam will apologize, you'll apologize, and everything will be normal again. There was silence. What if I don't want things to go back to normal? Gary was confused. What do you mean? Just last week you had an epiphany. Carl, the guy you're with, makes you laugh, and he's great in bed. You haven't felt this happy in years. You want to keep seeing him until the semester ends. Come on, Gary, you have to help me figure out a way to make this work. Hold on, Melanie. You're already taking a big risk by going off with this guy for a week. If you try to keep the affair going here in town, you're really pushing your luck, girl. Maybe, but you've got to admit your little scheme worked like a charm. I bet you can come up with a plan for me to do it again. Come on, Jerry, please. This guy is really something. I was afraid something like this might happen. There was a prolonged silence. Okay, Jerry said slowly. I can come up with a plan to get what you want. But you need to understand, you're putting your marriage to Adam at risk. He's a good guy, Melanie. He's dedicated, faithful, and a real family man. Men like him don't come around every day. Are you sure you want to gamble it all for a bit of excitement in the bedroom? Melanie chuckled. You get me going with, I can come up with a plan. Okay, but don't say I didn't warn you. Now, here's what you need to do. Do you still have that email account you set up? Of course. You told me to keep it active. Good, because you need to send another letter from your supposed good friend. But this time, send it to yourself, to your regular email. Okay, but what should the new letter say? It's the same as the last one, but this time you'll write that Adam is having an affair with me. What? But that's not true, and Adam knows it. How does this help? It's simple. The first letter accused you of infidelity. Adam found out you couldn't have cheated with Professor Bellingham, but he might still have doubts about your fidelity. Wait, Gary, didn't you say a letter about Bellingham would give me leeway with Carl? That's right. But after he gets the second letter, he won't have doubts. He already knows you weren't involved with Bellingham, and he's sure he's not having an affair with me. Clearly, the so-called good friend is a liar, so Adam won't doubt you anymore. This means you can get away with almost anything without raising Adam's suspicions. There was silence on the line. Melanie then exclaimed, Jerry, you're a genius. I don't know how you came up with this, but you just gave me a pass I can use for the rest of the semester. There are 2 more things you need to do, Melanie. First, make sure Adam tells me about the second letter. Okay, but why? Because then I can reinforce that you're trustworthy and this mystery friend isn't. Ah, got it. He respects your opinion, so he'll listen to your advice. What else? After you send the message to yourself, remember to log out of your good friend email account. What if Adam stumbles upon it? Oh no. Actually, you should probably sign out of both your email accounts when you're not using them. You don't want Adam to find love notes from Carl, right? I've warned Carl never to email me, but that's still smart advice. Better safe than sorry. Returning home from work that evening, Adam was alarmed to find Melanie in tears. "What's wrong, Mel? What happened?" he asked, rushing to her. "Oh, Adam, it's happening again," she said, tears in her eyes, handing him a copy of the letter. "Damn it," he swore after reading the accusatory message. "You know that's not true, right?" "Of course. I know you'd never cheat on me, just as I'd never cheat on you. And even if you did, I know it wouldn't be with Gary. She's such a good friend to both of us that she'd never do anything like that. Damn it. Someone's still trying to stir up trouble for us, and I have no idea who or why. There must be a way to trace these things." She looked up at him hesitantly. "Are you going to tell Jerry about this?" "Do you think I should?" "I believe you should. Whether you like it or not, she's now involved. It wouldn't be fair to her if you didn't inform her about this." The next morning, when Adam called, Gary answered cheerfully. "Well, how are the lovebirds today?" Adam's tone was serious. "We're okay, Jerry, but there's something new I need to discuss with you. Can we meet after work?" "I actually plan to work from home after lunch. Can you come over?" "Sure, great. I'll stop by between 6:30 and 7. When Adam arrived at her apartment in the evening, Jerry immediately noticed his solemn expression. "What's wrong, Adam? I've been worried since you called." He shook his head. "I'm really sorry, Gary, but it seems you're now involved in this situation with Melanie and me." Confused, she looked at him. He handed her a copy of the latest letter. After reading it, she looked at Adam in despair. "But this is absurd. We're not having an affair. I would never do that to Melanie. I hope she knows that." He nodded. "She does. In fact, she said the same thing to me." Gary shook her head, puzzled. "That's a relief to hear. But what do you think all this means?" "I think someone is determined to cause trouble between Melanie and me. First, a warning about the professor, now this. The only explanation I can think of is that I have an enemy, perhaps a business rival, but I have no idea who it could be. Anyway, since you're now involved, Mel and I decided you should be informed. I'm glad you did, Adam. You're always so considerate, but I'm not sure what we can do about it, unless this mystery person does something obvious or slips up. Involving the police might not help." "I agree, Jerry, but it's frustrating. I'm tired of all this confusion, and I just want whoever it is to leave us alone." "How is Melanie taking this?" "She's very upset. She was in tears when I got home. I'm not surprised, especially after the first ordeal." "Look, Adam, I think Melanie is pretty fragile right now. With all of this and nearing graduation, she's probably on edge. You need to take care of her as much as possible. Do you think we should block all emails from this account?" "That might be a mistake. If they send anything else, you'll want to know." "You're right. But how can I protect Mel?" "Well, if you receive another letter, I wouldn't tell her immediately, if at all. You could monitor her email on your laptop whenever possible. If another letter comes, you can forward it to yourself before she sees it. That way, you won't have to involve her." "Yes, I think that's a good suggestion." He stood up. "I'm truly sorry you got pulled into all of this, but if this is meant to be an apology, then I don't need one. You mean a lot to me, and I'll do whatever I can to assist." He smiled appreciatively. "I should head home now to check on Melanie." Starting to leave, he paused, embraced Gary, and planted a kiss on her cheek. "Thank you for being such a great friend. Your support throughout all of this means a great deal to me." Upon returning home, Adam was pleasantly surprised to find Melanie in much higher spirits. The following morning, she seemed even more cheerful and rose early to have breakfast with her husband. "It's a rare treat to see you before I head off to work," Adam remarked. "Well, I wanted to make sure I said I love you before you left this morning," she explained, planting a kiss on him. "Oh, and by the way," she continued, "I wanted to mention that I'll be attending a lecture on campus this evening. A few girlfriends and I are planning to grab a bite afterwards, so I might be home late." "Sure thing, Mel. Everything's all right here. We've got plenty of leftovers in the fridge, so I can snack on those." "Thanks, honey. If we miss each other, I'll probably swing by after class to drop off my things and change clothes. Have a great evening." Aware that Melanie wouldn't be home, Adam decided to stay at the office later than usual. Business was looking up, with a potential large client expressing interest in their new product samples. "Things are starting to make sense now. I just need to get to the bottom of who's behind these email games with Mel and me," he pondered. He couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious good friend as he walked into the house. Heading towards the bedroom, he saw Melanie's laptop on the table. She probably didn't need it for the lecture, he thought. Then he remembered Gary's suggestion. I wonder if she still checks her email. If she does, then we need to see if she's received anything new from this idiot. He opened the laptop and saw that the email page wasn't open. Clicking on the Gmail link, a window popped up asking him to choose an account. He saw Melanie's email, but she was logged out, so he started to close Gmail. But before he could, he noticed a second account named Good Friend. Shocked, he stared at it. Trying to open it, Google asked for a password. Without it, he closed the tab and slumped into his chair, trying to understand what he found. Why does she have an email with that name? Gmail doesn't allow duplicate addresses, so Melanie must have sent those letters. But why? Why would she accuse herself of an affair? Then it hit him. It was a diversion. She wanted me to chase after some gay professor while she was with someone else. Another thought came. Her trip to Florida. When I confronted her, she acted mad, saying she needed space and was visiting her mother. But did she really? Quickly, he called his mother-in-law. After some small talk, he asked, Melanie and I were thinking of visiting next month. Would that be too soon? Not at all. It's been ages since I saw you. Please come whenever, she said. Gritting his teeth, he replied, Great, we'll be in touch. After hanging up, he cursed quietly. Melanie is so deceitful. Where did she go? And who was she with? Damn her. Then he recollected the last letter, the same one Melanie had received. What was the purpose of this, damn it? It must be another distraction while she goes to lectures with her friends. What a despicable, lying woman. Curiosity gnawed at him, prompting him to investigate what she wore when she went out. He hurried to the bedroom and sifted through his wife's underwear. Despite struggling to remember every detail about Melanie, he almost gave up. But a sudden suspicion gripped him, leading him to double-check one particular item, a garter belt. It was missing. Frustrated, he searched for a suitable bra and underwear, only to find them gone as well. Out for dinner with her friends, huh? He replaced everything and returned to the kitchen table. So be it. You enjoy sabotage and deception. Well, two can play at this game. When Melanie got home after midnight, he was angry, but pretended to sleep as she entered the bedroom. He held back from confronting her when he heard the shower, sarcastically thinking, who knew lectures would be so sweaty? The next morning, Adam got up very early and left for work before Melanie woke. He left a note by the coffee pot. Hope you enjoyed the lecture. I had an early meeting at work and might be late today, so don't wait up. Adam had a busy day, but not with work meetings. He did errands at lunch and came home with some purchases to get ready. Then he had 2 meetings in the afternoon. Later, he went out for dinner and a movie. Melanie was asleep when he got back to bed, trying not to disturb her. But when she woke up, Adam was waiting. I thought you left for work already, she said, taking the coffee he gave her. I wanted to see you before I leave. I have a flight to Detroit at noon. I'll be gone a few days. That's rare. When will you be back? Friday night, maybe Saturday morning if things go well. Can you manage while I'm gone? She smiled. I'll be fine. I'll keep busy. Good. Just stay away from our good friend while I'm gone. Her face fell. That's not funny, Adam. Sorry, you're right. It's not. He waved and left for the car. As he drove away, he frowned. She didn't even notice I didn't say I love you. She's probably making plans to meet her lover. I just need a diversion to keep her here instead of going to the airport. At lunchtime, Adam left his office and made his way to the off-campus parking lot of the university. He briskly walked toward the Graduate School of Business, dressed down in jeans and a sweatshirt, with a cheap backpack slung over his shoulder. Without attracting attention, he headed to the reading room of the business school library. The few students present paid him no mind as he casually strolled behind the periodicals rack. Once out of sight, he produced a string of hefty firecrackers, lit the extra-long fuse, and tossed them into a metal disposal container. He casually strolled to the nearest door, using his backpack to prop it open, then exited. Outside, he retrieved the phone he'd bought the previous day and dialed campus security. Quick, come over! There's firing at the business school, he exclaimed when they answered. I think there might be multiple shooters. It's ongoing. Pointing the phone towards the library, he triggered a series of fireworks seconds later. After disconnecting, he hurried across campus to his car amid blaring sirens and frantic people scattering in all directions. From his neighborhood vantage point, he watched an hour later as his wife's car pulled into their driveway, followed by another vehicle with a male figure stepping out. "In times of danger, there's no place like home," Adam muttered with a bittersweet grin before driving to the motel where he'd booked a room. Later that night, he circled his neighborhood to ensure the second car remained parked in his driveway, then returned to his room to attempt sleep. The next morning, when the adulterous pair exited the house, they were shocked to find Adam leaning against the stranger's car door. "God, Carl, that's my husband," Melanie gasped upon recognizing him. "I thought you were in Detroit," she stammered, then caught herself. "Dear, things aren't as they seem. Carl just stopped by for a visit." "Melanie, every time you speak, it's just lies. I don't want to hear it anymore," he growled. "This isn't a one-time slip-up. You've been seeing him for weeks, and it wasn't accidental. You planned it all. I know you sent that letter as a distraction, so you could spend spring break together wherever you went. And by the way, your mom's wondering why you haven't visited. I guess you were too preoccupied with this garbage," he gestured at the sullen man, "to bother seeing her." Turning to Melanie's lover, he swiftly snapped several pictures with his phone. When the man realized, he snarled, clenched his fists, and took a threatening step forward. "Easy now," Adam warned, raising a hand, causing the man to back off. Adam turned to Melanie with a smirk. "Seems your boyfriend's more lover than fighter." His tone hardened. "Grab your things from the house and leave. Don't be here when I return, Mel. I meant it when I said I never want to see you again." "Adam, please," she pleaded, collapsing onto the driveway in tears. He paid her no mind and headed to his car, while she sat on the driveway, her hands covering her face as she wept. En route to his office, Adam made a stop at a dumpster, disposing of his phone and the toy weapon tucked in his pocket. "Glad these things look so real," he grinned coldly. Back at his desk, Adam emailed one of the photos he had taken. Surprisingly, he received a call shortly after. "This is Dr. Mayfair. Did you just send me a photo?" "Dr. Mayfair, forgive the intrusion again, but do you know the man in the photo? His name might be Carl. Is the woman beside him your wife?" "My ex-wife, to be precise. Lovely woman. I recall her being in one of my classes last year. As for the man, I recognize him. He's Carl Mannheim, one of my dissertation students." "Carl Mannheim. Good to know, doctor. I have some business to attend to with Mr. Mannheim." "So, he's the serpent in your Garden of Eden?" "In a manner of speaking. But my Eve wasn't exactly innocent." "Ah, I see. Quite intriguing. Well, I'm glad to have assisted you, though I'm sorry it's not the outcome you desired." "Thank you, doctor. I appreciate your time and help, regardless of the outcome." "Good luck to you, my boy, and keep your spirits up. Things have a way of working out, speaking from experience." 2 months later, Adam sat with his lawyer, feeling irked. "Any word from Melanie's lawyer? How's the divorce proceeding?" "Yes, I spoke with Hannah Montrose yesterday, and she sent a counteroffer to Melanie today. The good news is Melanie's agreed not to contest the divorce after hearing the recordings you made. Hannah persuaded her not to risk them in court. But the bad news is now that Melanie's accepted the marriage is over, she's keen on getting as much financial compensation as possible. Damn, she deceives me, gets caught, and then expects me to pay up. It's unfair. What's my cheating wife after? Typically, we'd see a request for dividing assets, but there's little to divide here. You rent, no pension, and minimal savings. Your only asset is your business share, which is running at a loss. Seems she's banking on it failing, so she's only asking for alimony." "I appreciate her vote of confidence," Adam snapped sarcastically. "So, how much alimony is she seeking?" "Considerably more than our offer." The lawyer handed him the document, and Adam gasped. "This is absurd. She knows I can't afford it. If I have to pay that much monthly, I'm essentially bankrupting my business to satisfy her. Melanie won't negotiate, so Hannah will suggest it to Judge Abernathy. I won't hand over that much without a fight. We'll take our chances in court." "Understood, Adam. But remember, Judge Abernathy holds all the power. You're at his mercy." About a month later, Adam sat anxiously in court. After arguments from both sides, Judge Abernathy adjourned. "Any thoughts on how it's going?" Adam whispered to his lawyer. "Hard to say. It could swing anyway, or the judge might suggest a compromise." They stood as Judge Abernathy returned, then sat again as he called the opposing counsels to the bench. "I assume your positions remain unchanged," the judge stated. The lawyers exchanged looks. "Yes, Your Honor." "Good. Before I decide, I'd like to question Miss Weatherby." Hannah Montrose looked tense but motioned for Melanie to approach. "Stay calm," she whispered. "And remember, address him as Your Honor." Adam's lawyer leaned in. Usually, it's not good when the judge wants to hear more from the other side. Adam watched sourly as his soon-to-be ex-wife testified, noting the judge's attention on her. "I think we're in trouble," he murmured to his lawyer. The judge reviewed papers, then turned to Melanie. "Miss Weatherby, it seems the primary dispute is the alimony amount. Your offer is substantially higher than Mr. Weatherby's, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." "How do you justify your proposed amount?" "We're asking for more, considering my years of marriage and the need to start anew, Your Honor. However, Mr. Weatherby claims his sole income is from his struggling business. Why do you believe Mr. Weatherby can afford your proposed support?" "We argue he's artificially deflating his income by investing in his business. Adjustments could easily cover the support I seek." The judge remarked, examining the financial statement. "It shows negative cash flow, Your Honor. Adam's accountants can manipulate numbers to yield any desired result." The judge raised his eyebrows. "Are you suggesting the financial statements are fraudulent?" Melanie turned pale and shook her head firmly. Noticing this, Melanie swiftly corrected herself. "No, Your Honor, not at all. Earnings can be deferred and investments accelerated, all within accepted accounting principles. He simply invests heavily in his company." Adam's blood pressure spiked. He whispered angrily, "What a manipulative move. She knows it's untrue. She's just trying to pressure me into giving her what she wants, regardless of the truth." Meanwhile, Judge Abernathy reviewed the case summary. "Until now, we've focused on your husband's business investments, Mrs. Weatherby. However, Mr. Weatherby has also invested significantly in you, or at least in your education. If you're referring to my MBA, Your Honor, Adam did pay for my tuition, but I worked diligently, completed all coursework, exams, and wrote my dissertation. I've dedicated myself for the past 2 years, including summers." "And you recently graduated?" "Yes, sir, with honors," she proudly confirmed. He nodded. "Very well, Mrs. Weatherby. That's all. You may be seated." Returning to her lawyer, Melanie hugged her in relief as the judge adjusted his glasses and glanced at both parties. "After reviewing all evidence, I'll grant Mrs. Weatherby the full financial support requested," the judge announced. Adam winced, and Melanie hugged her lawyer in joy. But the judge wasn't finished. "This settlement provides for a comfortable living without employment for Mrs. Weatherby, despite her recent completion of a degree that should qualify her for a lucrative position. To incentivize the use of her education, I'm awarding alimony for 6 months." "Only 6 months? That's unfair," Melanie protested. "I can and I have," the judge replied, striking the gavel. "Next case." Her lawyer swiftly escorted Melanie away, though she continued to protest until a bailiff intervened. "Do I only have to pay alimony for 6 months? I can manage that," Adam remarked to his lawyer as they left the courtroom. "Pretty good outcome," his lawyer agreed. "I thought we were in trouble when the judge favored her, but he wasn't impressed with her tactics. Not many husbands fare so well in divorce court. Wonder what swayed him in your favor. You don't think her pleading no contest to the infidelity charge played a role? He shouldn't have considered it when deciding the financial settlement." Adam glanced back to see Melanie still arguing with her lawyer and chuckled. "Well, whatever it is, I'm satisfied with the outcome." At that moment, a hand rested on his shoulder, and Adam turned to see an elderly man, vaguely familiar. "I wanted to introduce myself," the gray-haired man explained. "I'm Professor Mayfair." Adam firmly shook his hand. "Professor, it's a pleasant surprise to meet you in person, sir. Thank you again for your assistance. What brought you to court today?" The elderly man smiled. "After our talk, I became curious about your case, so I decided to drop by and see how things turned out." His smile widened. "It also gave me the chance to speak with an old friend of mine, Judge Abernathy." He shook Adam's hand again. "I'm glad things worked out for you. If I can help in the future, I'd be glad to." He winked. "Us divorced husbands need to stick together." As the professor left, Adam watched him go. "Interesting," he muttered, then shook his head. Out of the corner of his eye, he thought he saw Gary in the crowd, but she vanished when he looked. It took a while before she dialed a familiar number on her phone, and when it was answered, she hesitantly said, "Hello?" "Jerry, it's me, Melanie." "Melanie, what a surprise. Haven't heard from you since you moved to Florida. How are you?" "To be honest, it's been tough. That's why I called. I needed someone to talk to." "Sure. Tell me how you're doing. Are you working?" "That's part of the problem. Thought my MBA would land me a job, but employers here value experience more. Most offers I got were internships." "Wow, that sounds tough. So where are you now?" When alimony ended, I was desperate. Tried admin work, but it was terrible. Now I'm in financial advising. That's why I called. I can help analyze your finances if you're interested. Many overlook this. There was a brief pause. Oh, Melanie, I'd like to assist you, but my finances are stable right now and I'm pretty confident about the future. I don't think I need help. I understand. No worries, Jerry. I hear that often, but I thought I'd give it a shot. It's tough to break into this industry. In fact, I had to move back in with my mom to cut costs. Are you living with her now? What about you and Carl? Don't mention him. We split shortly after moving here. You broke up? What happened? It was awful. Carl dropped out of school, his thesis got rejected, and he refused to work. He became bitter and aggressive, so I had to involve the police. That sounds rough, Melanie, but now you're free. You can go out, meet new people, and have fun. Remember how much you missed that when you were married? Melanie sighed. But outings require money. Gary and I aren't well off right now, and going out isn't as glamorous or exciting as I thought. Actually, there are more creeps than good guys. Changing the subject, Melanie asked, "How about you, Jerry? Anyone special?" My life's taken a turn. I'm getting married next month. Married? That's incredible. Who's the lucky guy? You know him. It's Adam. Melanie, Adam and I are engaged. My Adam? Are you engaged to my Adam? You can't do this. I already did. We'll have a small ceremony at our new home, then head to Paris for our honeymoon. New house, honeymoon in Paris. Can Adam afford all that? Not only has my situation changed, but Adam's has too. The same month you moved to Florida, he landed a big order he'd been working on. After that, his business took off. His new product is in high demand in the auto industry. And there's more. Earlier this year, a large manufacturer made him an offer to buy his business for a fortune. He agreed, and the deal's closing next week. So, you see, our financial future is secure. Melanie could barely speak, but Gary persisted, her tone now altered. You know, Melanie, all of this could have been yours if you were content with what you had. I warned you from the start about the risks of your affair, and I cautioned you that there would be other women ready to step in if your marriage crumbled. But you were the one who encouraged me. You even came up with the plan. Suddenly, Melanie's voice rose in shock. Oh my God, Jerry, it was you. You orchestrated everything from the beginning. I just shared an innocent fantasy with you, and you manipulated me into acting on it. You deceived me into thinking I could get away with an affair. Melanie, you're exaggerating. I didn't make you do anything against your will. I merely provided you with the opportunity. And no, I didn't tell Adam about your lover. I simply set things up so they'd unfold as I wanted. I trusted you, Gary. I thought you were my friend. Gary chuckled. You know what they say. All's fair in love and war. You won't get away with this. I'll make sure Adam knows what you did. You're a schemer. I'm sorry, Melanie, but I have plans with Adam tonight. I'll block your number after we hang up. You're despicable. Meanwhile, Jerry welcomed her fiancé home with a kiss. Adam mentioned receiving a letter from Melanie. Really? Jerry replied casually. I almost forgot about her. What'd she want? Adam glanced at Jerry neutrally. She claims you orchestrated everything to break us up. Pretty wild, huh? Jerry took a look at the letter and smirked. Poor Melanie. She could have made her little jealousy act more convincing if she signed it. Good friend. It took him a while to stop laughing.